You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Spaceboy and Surlana are out exploring the universe tonight. They will be back next week. Till then, enjoy this best of SBU about the Dulce Wars.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Okay, gang, let's go.
From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Surlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence.
Greetings and salutations, I am Spaceboy.
And I'm Surlana.
And this is Spaceboy Universe. It is January 7th, 2016. And we have no guest, but it's an interesting topic. It's the Dulce War. And we'll take your calls. As always, follow us on Twitter at the SBU Universe. Follow Surlana at Surlana. Follow me, Spaceboy at Spaceboy Music. And of course, follow the network. That's at the SBU Network. Remember to hashtag your tweets, hashtag SBU Universe, and hashtag Space Cadets. Want to hang out with the Space Cadets? Do this by going to spaceboyuniverse.com and click on the dancing chat bubble in the player. This will get you in with all the cool kids. In addition to Twitter, you can find us on the universe. That's Facebook, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. Just look for Spaceboy Universe. Speaking of YouTube, you can find more than the Spaceboy Universe of archive of shows. There is video content from Spaceboy Music, video interviews, 2-Bit Gamers, and so much more. Can't catch the show live? No problemo. Take the SBU on the go with you via Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iTunes, because we love to broadcast. How are you, Surlana?
Cold.
Cold? Well, we warmed up the room a little bit. And
It's still cold.
Yeah, it's not as cold as it could be, but, you know.
It's colder, but still, it is a nice, crisp 35 degrees outside.
Yeah, we woke up to our pipes being frozen.
Never happened to me in my lifetime, but Tuesday, 2-3 days from now,
So, yeah.
it's going to be 85.
Yeah, so bring out your Mai Tais and your shorts. We go from, oh my God, it is freezing cold, to, oh my
Sitting
God.
back outside, with
Oh my God,
tank tops.
the sweat is pouring off my forehead. So, but
Winter comes to an abrupt, bizarre end.
But it'll be good. I'm sure we'll survive, and life will return to normal. I will prefer that mid-range kind of temperature, like 70s. I think that's my favorite time of the year is 70s temperature.
I like it like this.
What, cold?
I like a good hard freeze. It kills most things I'm allergic to, and I have less allergy problems. I guess I could have been more prepared to have more jackets or something that fit. And
right.
It's just shoes. I just wasn't. Wardrobe-wise, I'm not prepared. So.
Here in Texas, you're never prepared because
No.
given 1 minute it's raining, the next minute it's sunshine, 1 minute it's freezing, and the next minute it's as hot as Hades around here. So, I mean, Texas is just that kind of wacky kind of environment here where we have all extremes. I think I could deal with all the other weather. I could deal without the humidity. Which Houston gets a lot of humidity here, and that's one thing I could do without.
It seems pretty dry out there right now. It's cold and dry. But no, it says it's 35 right now, so but it feels like 30.
I've never understood.
No, it feels like 28.
Never understood who came up with this.
Either it's this or it's that.
I don't know how to read a temperature, but it feels like 32 degrees. I think that's stupid. That whoever came up with that, I'd like to punch them in the face. Honestly.
That's my line.
Yeah, well, I thought you punch them in the throat is your line.
Throat punches. I like saying the word throat punch.
But hey, speaking of
maybe that's wrong.
Speaking of killer moves, robots can have some killer moves, right, Surlana?
Oh, you're for sure.
Yeah. So with the new year, we're going down the pipe of different things that we're going to be involved with, and one of the first things out of the gate is the first. I guess Robot Invitational. Help me out here.
First Robotics competition. It is competition time again for. I don't know if this is all 4 divisions, but this is the high school age.
Now, what's exciting about this is over the next 6 weeks, we're going to be showcasing. Leading up to the competition, the big competition. So you'll hear a segment from us every week, and hopefully we'll be out to visit to do some video and interviews, and that'll be good.
At some of these live competitions, and we talked today on the phone with Jim Fox and another engineer guy,
Keith Cummings,
and they are sponsoring. Was it Robert E. Lee High?
Well,
like that?
I tell you what, why don't we get into the pre-recorded interview? And so here you go.
Right out of the fog, right out of the mist, rise the robots, they do exist.
Founded in 1989 and based in Manchester, New Hampshire, FIRST is a 501 not-for-profit public charity designed to inspire young people's interest in participating in science and technology and motivate them to pursue education and career opportunities in the STEM field. Join Spaceboy Universe as we cover the 2017 FIRST Robotics Competition.
Hey, Surlana.
Hey there.
So I'm so glad that we're finally getting a chance to talk about the FIRST here in Texas.
The FIRST Robotics Competition.
Exactly. And on the phone with us, we have Jim Fox, and we'll also get a chance to talk to Keith Cummings. So, hey, Jim, how are you?
Hello, doing well. Doing well. Just got started today with kickoff and day 1 of many.
Well, we're excited to be talking to you, just to let our audience know that over the next weeks to come, and we're going to be talking to Jim and his crew about the competition and building up to the major competition. But Jim, what can you tell us a little bit about this? First off, before we go there, I just want to tell our audience, if you remember, we met Jim Fox at the Mini Maker Fair, and then he kind of contacted us and about the FIRST here in Texas, and so we're excited to promote this. So tell us a little bit about the competition. Exactly.
For those who don't know.
Yeah, so we are in Texas. FIRST is a worldwide competition. Certainly there's a lot of teams here in the Texas area, but it is a worldwide competition. Most of the teams are in the United States, but there's definitely a large number of them internationally. It is a high school-based robotics competition where we get experience in full cycle of engineering, of understanding the rules and prototype, build, design, test, retest, recycle the design, and then go compete with it. So the first model is trying to get high school students real-world engineering, working side by side with adult mentors, some of which are engineers, some are not, but just getting hands-on experience with the students and trying to solve real-world engineering challenges.
So today you basically had your first event, and it was kickoff day worldwide. So what can you tell us a little bit about this exciting day and what you've discovered?
Well, it is certainly an exciting day for the teams. They've anticipated the news of the new challenge that rolls out each year at kickoff. And we got to go over and meet with other teams and watch the video and Steamworks. It's going to be a really exciting game to play. Today we spent quite a bit of time debriefing and figuring out, starting to really digest the game and understand it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the theme this year is steampunk. What do you think about that?
Yeah, steampunk is kind of sort of become a cultural phenomenon in the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And back at Maker Faire, when I spoke to you then, we were seeing some of that kind of coming into the culture there of the maker community. It's been a growing phenomenon, and it just seemed like a neat opportunity for FIRST to wrap that whole theme of stuff into the challenges we do every year. Our game is different every year, completely different, unrelated to the next. And a couple years ago, we had kind of a recycling theme. Last year was sort of a medieval castle and throwing boulders toward castles and such. So they tried to build a storyline around the game to make it a bit more appealing and consumable for the masses. This year is steampunk. So yeah, people can Google or YouTube FIRST Steamworks and get the animation of describing what the game is. So it's kickoff day is always fun to just see what the new game is and try to understand it. No, prior to this morning at about 9:30, no one in the world except for the few at the FIRST headquarters had a clue what our game was. So we're getting something brand new unveiled to us today.
Well, it looks exciting. This one, when we watch the video, I'm like, okay, I understand this challenge. There's one you had previous, like, wow, that's complicated looking. But this looks so much fun, and it's going to be fun to watch in person.
Yeah, it is. Our team will be competing at 2 different Houston regionals, and also we're hoping to compete at Alamo. We're currently on the wait list for that event. Hopefully we'll find out soon if we get to compete there. And then, of course, coming up in the 3rd week of April, the FIRST World Championship will be going on here in Houston, so people in the Houston area will get plenty of robotics action to come and see firsthand and watch in person. But no matter where you're at, I know you've got listeners worldwide, that there's tournaments all over the world. So you can. There's a ton of them in the United States. There's several of them internationally. There's one in Australia. There's some in Israel. There's some in Europe. I don't remember if Africa's got any tournaments, but Mexico City's got one. So worldwide, there's tournaments for people who can go, go and see the stuff firsthand.
Jim, and Keith, what are your roles in this competition?
Well, I'm the school employee. The school district here felt it was important to provide this type of activity for students. And so the students apply, and I receive those applications, and we filter through them and get those students plugged into this event. So I'm a paid employee by the school district. And then part of my job is to also get mentors for the program so that the students can work alongside somebody who has special knowledge of engineering and other things, so that they can get prepared for their challenge, this new game we have this year. So I kind of work on an annual cycle. We have some off-season events that kids can participate in. We call those remix tournaments, and then we have to go through a sort of a recruitment time of the year. But this is when we really get busy. For the next 6 weeks, we have to design, build, test, and get ready for competition.
How long have you been at this, Keith?
This is my 5th year working at one capacity or another with FRC. And, of course, FIRST Robotics has 4 different levels. I used to be a FIRST Lego lead coach for about 5 years, and as they were growing the program, they asked me to move up to this level. So it's been a great transition. I really enjoyed working with the program and with the students, and it is exciting.
What can you tell us more about those 4 different levels, Keith?
Well, the first level is called Junior FLL, I believe, and they are grade school students, and they get familiar with engineering and design process a little bit. They do some, it's more like a science fair type of project where they do some research in an area. Then next comes FLL, FIRST Lego League, and they are, it is what it sounds like, it's Lego. But Lego is worked with FIRST to develop a set of tools that students can build very complicated robots. They've also partnered with LabVIEW to develop a version of LabVIEW called NXTG, which students use to program those robots. Then from there, they can go to FTC, First Technical Challenge, I believe is the name of that, and those students graduate on up to a robot that's it's metal, but it tends to be about a 2 foot by 2 foot size robot. And then when they finally get to this level, we're building about 150-pound robots that take up quite a bit of space. So it's a great continuum of activity for students, so they can really be immersed in engineering, STEM, education from grade school all the way through to the point where they're ready to go to college. And in fact, we have mentors on our team that are returning. They were Larglefish, that's what our name is called. So they're returning to us to be mentors, so they're paying it back.
That's great. So you would say that is the importance overall of all the young people who are involved in these competitions is they're gaining skills to build on if they wish to go into college into other STEM fields.
Absolutely. You know, the United States is seen over the last 30 years really a kind of a decline in the interest of engineering and science technology. But yet we are great consumers of that. And so what has happened, universities have tended to have to recruit overseas. And so education has had to step up and figure out how we can make learnings, these disciplines exciting. And that was what Dean Kamen did when he came up with this whole concept at first, was to create sort of a varsity level competition that is built around science, technology, engineering, and math.
Well, this sounds very exciting, and like I said, over the next weeks to come, we're going to invite you all back, and or others that will be able to touch upon what's going on with each week that's coming up with the next 6 weeks. Basically, Jim, is there anything you want to add to this before we, I guess, let y'all go and make sure that our audience stays tuned each week?
Yeah, we'll let the audience learn more about FIRST as we go on. But yeah, in the meantime, I guess we can close with some of our social media tags. We are on Twitter, and actually right now I don't remember if we are 1255 Blarglefish are on Twitter, or is it Blarglefish 1255? Do you remember, Keith?
I am not recalling. I should have my social rep in here trying to talk about it.
So Blarglefish is such a unique word, though. BLARGLE fish, Blarglefish. If you just Google that on Twitter, you'll sure enough find us. And also we've got a Weebly account, so you can Google Blarglefish again and find our homepage there. Also, next week we'll probably talk a little bit about a fundraiser we're doing on Kickstarter to help raise funds for the team. So we can talk more about that. I was hoping to launch that this coming week, but I'm thinking there might be some strategy of pushing that off a week. So perhaps by the time we talk next week, we'll be within a day or so of wanting to launch a Kickstarter, and your audience will get to hear about that and how to back us there.
Great.
Support us.
Most definitely. So just tune in each week on Spaceboy Universe, and we're going to promote the FIRST here on the network. And we look forward to talking to you next week, Jim, and possibly Keith.
Great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, there you go, Surlana. FIRST is going to be interesting to cover. We had such a good time with the Texas Robotics Invitational, and it's amazing how these things have one thing leads to another kind of thing. And, first it was that, and then that led us to Mini Maker Faire, and that led us to where we're at now. So, and it's so awesome to promote STEM, and, of course, now FIRST. And then Jim is such a wonderful guy. Jim Fox is his name.
You met him at Maker Faire. He's the one who came up with that piezometry puzzle, the hardest puzzle you'll never solve.
Very cool stuff.
If he gets that into production, I definitely want to buy that and give that as gifts to people I just would like to see frustrated. It's going to be perfect.
Maybe some of our space cadets. We'll see.
Yes, could make a good prize.
So, Surlana, we've got a few minutes left on the board, and so that means banter talk.
Yes. anything you want to get to first?
Well, let me look at my list. Well, tonight, Spaceboy Universe's question of the night, and we'd love to hear from our audience, is what's the one song that makes you drive too fast? Go ahead and hashtag Space Cadets, hashtag SB Universe with your answers. And the question again is, what's the one song that makes you drive too fast? Do you have one, Surlana?
I Can't Drive 55 by Sammy Hagar. Too obvious?
Yeah, maybe too obvious. But it'll be interesting to see what some of our Space Cadets could do that. Also, if you want to do that in the chat room, too, you can do that as well. But we'd love to see you tweet that. Tweet that out. And remember that. Include your answers with hashtag Space Cadets, hashtag SB Universe. After that, let's see here. LG just unveiled its ultra-thin TVs. They are 2.57 millimeters thick, and you hang them on the wall with magnets. That's how thin they are, Surlana.
Wow.
I mean, can you
if
imagine?
It wasn't LG.
Oh, come on, Surlana. You know we're starving for sponsors. You had to go there. I could think of a lot worse TVs out there.
Yeah, true. I think they're more cutting edge than some of the well-known brands that we know.
And, Surlana and I have been Samsung supporters for a long time. We love our Samsung products. And she just cannot look at anything else other than a Samsung product, maybe other than a phone, but, that's a different story altogether. Boom. And so, LG, I'm not going to knock them because they seem like a pretty decent product. They've been around. Like I said, I'm not going to name some of the more inferior products that we've seen that we don't even know. There's a TV called,
I can think of some.
Like a Heisenberg. What was that TV? I've never heard of that TV before. And, so, yeah, LG on their way to producing ultra-thin TVs. So that's the next wave of things. I guess it's all connected wirelessly, if you think about it,
Yeah. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you got over there?
I was stunned to learn because I'm so out of it. We don't have regular TV anymore, and we don't watch it. So when it comes to watching award shows that are on broadcast TV, they have no meaning anymore in my life. Maybe it's because I'm getting old. But I just learned that Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds both got nominated for Golden Globes.
Wow.
And that's a first. It's still now the second highest grossing rated R movie ever.
Really?
Yes. I don't know what the first
was.
I
was getting ready to ask what the number one.
I never thought to look that up. But they said he probably won't win. The movie won't win, but it is good that the Hollywood Foreign Press is finally acknowledging what it constitutes a comedy, because they seem to have been getting that wrong with their previous awards that don't seem like they're comedy. So I like that's good. You know how much I enjoyed that movie. So I was wearing my Deadpool jacket all day, freezing. So that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. It's finally changing what I guess the traditional Hollywood media thinks about comic book movies and what makes real humor. It's kind of hopeful in a way, if you care about that sort of thing.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the top rated R films that have dominated the box office are number 10, Saving Private Ryan, number 9, Ted, number 8, The Exorcist with Linda Blair, number 7, Beverly Hills Cop, number 6, The Hangover 2, number 5, Hangover, the first movie, number 4, The Matrix Reloaded, and I'm getting to that. Hold on your M&Ms, we're getting to it. Number 3 is Deadpool, is according to this list. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Number 2 is American Sniper, and the number 1 rated R movie, and baffles me, is The Passion of the Christ. So there you go. There's the top 10 according to Mojo, or is it Mojo or something like that?
Could be.
Yeah. So Surlana's dying. So let's go ahead and hand it back over to you, Surlana.
Okay. So I tweeted out. I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but you hear this?
Yeah, I can hear it too well.
That is a bag of M&M's white cheesecake flavored, available for a limited time because it is Valentine's. I have not opened it. I'm going to open it now, and Spaceboy and I are going to try them live on the air and give you our first impressions of this. I don't know how many you want.
I know, Surlana. I just want a few. I just,
Here,
I mean, I just.
I got to stand up, give him some.
You basically just stuffed me earlier with cookies, but.
Oh, these are thick.
Oh,
I
got
that
it.
one.
Don't touch that one. That's mine. So.
We drop on the floor. So, okay, you ready?
Ready? So we're kind of.
I'm just going to do one.
You're going to do one?
Ready?
You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Oh, my.
What do you think?
I can't taste the chocolate.
No, not really. But it's funny how when it gets to a point where it starts off good, and it then kicks
flat.
Well, no, I don't think it gets flat. It's just that last little bit is like really creamy.
Maybe I should have another one.
Now,
I'm not going to speak with a French accent.
So basically, what I'm going to say,
hilarious.
What I'm going to say about these M&Ms is, like
Edible?
they're very edible and very delicious, and
They're very subtle.
very subtle.
They're
And-
not in your face cheesecake.
But they're still good. But what I was going to say
they're
is
very sweet.
These are perfect for like a once a year kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know how there's a lot of products out there that have the once a year thing for a limited time only. These are good. I'll give kudos to M&M's on this.
Yeah, we'll set this aside because I don't need any more of that.
So I'll eat these rest of these during the break. But
No,
speaking of once a time, sorry, no, I apologize.
I'm just going to have 2 more to make sure we have the full report.
So, yeah, that reminds me of the once a time, a limited time only. You know, if you're going to have something for a limited time only, and once it's not available anymore,
Oh, boy, here we go.
I think that you need to get it off your menu.
Once you've run out of it, you mean?
Run out of it, whatever, it's over, get it off the menu. Whether it be the McRib, denied. Whether it be Cheesy Tots from Burger King, denied. I get so sick and tired, or the A1 burger. I don't know how long ago that was, but it's still on the BK menu at close by the house. And nothing irks me more to go through and think, oh, that looks really good. I think I'll have that. And then all of a sudden, I'm sorry, but we don't carry that anymore.
Well, take it off the menu.
So anyway, so that's my gripe for that. Now, that gets me into something Patrick Spohr has introduced to us called Mercury retrograde. And let me tell you, this year, we're in the Mercury retrograde period. And Spaceboy Universe has had a few technical issues that have really just like...
I thought I was going to take you to the hospital about 25 minutes ago.
Well, when we were doing the show for John Polk, which is Quantum Hologram Matrix on the SBU network, our internet just went plunk for some unknown reason. So right then and there, and I won't tell you what it was during a break and then led to other things, but I had to call our internet provider, and then they told me that, yeah, you need to reboot your modem every 24 to 48 days. I've never heard anything more ridiculous in my whole life.
And you're a tech support guy in real life.
So, yeah, that's what supports the universe, is that my tech duties outside of this thing. So we get back, got everything rolling again. Of course, tonight we're grooving and heading with Spaceboy music before this show. And we have another technical issue. But this time it wasn't our router. It was Flash, of all things. I cannot wait until Flash goes away.
That might be part of your problem. They're trying to phase Flash out, so Flash is disabled by default on some web browsers.
Well,
so that
Flash is still enabled for Spreaker, for the console that we use. Now, there is a console that we can download to the machine that I've tried in the past that didn't work great, but now that we have a new system, I could try experimenting again. But I like using this console, but Flash is just a real pain in the tuchus.
Pits.
Yeah, so,
Oh, I see a lot of space cadets have just woken up and have joined us.
Good. That's what 30 minutes is for. So, bottom line is that It has been Mercury retrograde this week, and we want to thank Patrick for letting us know how important I'll get it out of my...
Mercury retrograde?
Yes, thank you, dear. I'm having my Gene Hackman syndrome kick in. That is... I can't wait for the get out of this one. Do you have anything else before I can get into the break?
Deeper?
Yeah.
I think you need a break.
I think we do, too.
Have an M&M.
Have an M&M. Sounds great. So you're listening to Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. We'll be back right after this.
This is author Jordan Root. You are listening to the Spaceboy Universe.
This is K28, and I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hi, y'all. This is Lori calling from Texas, and I love listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Hey, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
This is Wendy. I'm listening to Spaceboy Universe. Hey, y'all. This is Lorelai DeLille. I listen to Spaceboy Universe. Don't you? Tell your mom and them I said hi.
The epic battle begins this Friday. Direct from ringside at Laser Death Melt. It's Bot versus Bot in Galaxy's 2-ton weight championship, where your challenger, Good Bot, will face the reigning champion, Bad Bot.
You're terminated.
Reserve seating starting at $30. 2-drink minimum, where ladies don't get in free. This is an SBU production.
You're listening to Spaceboy Universe.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Greetings, Space Cadets. Let's see what's in the sky tonight in the Spaceboy Universe. Tonight, in the eastern sky, we have Spaceboy Universe rising above the horizon in glorious splendor. And in the west, we can see Surlana's Majoris, which is visible at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, just below the K28 belt. So keep your eyes on the sky and listen to Spaceboy Universe.
You are tuned into Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network. To call in, dial 818-616-7286. Here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
All right, Space Cadets, a few more things before we get started in our topic. You heard that the announcer Savannah announced the 818-616 number 7286. That is indeed a working number. However, there is a toll-free number, and when we open up the lines, you can definitely call that number, and that's 844-734-7286. And I'll have Surlana type that into the chat session, but that's 844-734-7286. That 7286 is SBUN.
But we're not ready for that right now, are we?
No, but go ahead and let them know so they'll have that number handy because...
You'll have to tell me when to activate the call bank.
That's fine, but go ahead and let them know what that number is now so that they're prepared and they can put it in their speed dial. That's 844-734-7286. Now, Space Cadets, while Surlana is busy doing that real quick...
I'm done.
Look, well, gee whiz. Tonight's assignment, if you notice, I was typing into chat room. I have an assignment for you people. I would like the Space Cadets, if you would, to reach out to Linda Moulton Howe, that's on Twitter and Facebook, to let her know that we would love to have her on the show in 2 weeks. We have reached out, but if there's a showing of love with the Space Cadets out there, that would be great. And then, of course, you know, we're also trying to reach out to Anthony Sanchez and to the writer of the book of Unknown Highways, who talks about the underground, tunneling system and bases. He's out there on Twitter as well. I don't know about his Facebook, but if you look for Anthony Sanchez, let him know that the universe wants to talk to him on our show, and it just makes the experience that much better. So those are your assignments there. Now, lastly, I want to tell you, I can't tell you who's going to be our most awesome guest on the 4th, but it's going to be awesome.
The 4th of February?
The 4th of February. And we're going to have a returning guest on the 11th when we talk about the moon.
We won't say right now.
We won't say right now. You'll find that out once we post the new schedule. You know, we're going to do this month by month instead of just giving you the whole schedule because we don't trust anyone out there. And so you'll just have to wait. But trust me when I say that it's going to be good. And I can't wait to talk to this person. I've heard this person many times. I can't say this person's been on Coast to Coast. And that's as far as I'm going to say. I mean, he's been obviously on other, and I'm kind of giving you another guess. It's a he. But he been on Coast to Coast.
He been on it?
Yeah, he been on it. So, let's get right into the meat and potatoes. So, yeah, make sure you tune in for all episodes of Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Surlana Explore with us. So you've gotten your assignments, you've gotten a taste of what's to come, and I still taste those M&Ms. They're quite delicious.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight's topic is the Dulce Wars. Mm-hmm. Are you ready, Surlana?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I've been ready.
Take it away.
Okay, so I kind of knew what this was because you had this book, a physical book,
Mm-hmm.
and I read it because I was tragically bored one night.
I said, come on, read this. You'll like this book.
Yeah, and it didn't take me too long.
Yeah, I said it was a short read.
And since then, that book is still around, but I could not find it. So I thought, well, we're in the day of Amazon now. I'm going to post that link in chat. So I based the bulk of my research around that book, and I finished it in a week. Mm-hmm. But I also looked at many, many things online, and I listened to multiple videos about the subject, including stuff from Phil Schneider and including a few things from Anthony Sanchez and just some various other programs that covered the topic, just so I would get it completely covered. And it makes more sense to me now because there's a lot of players in this story. It's not just about Schneider or it's just about, Benowitz. So I had to go, start from scratch to find out what this whole story was. So what is the Dulce Wars and why is it referred to as plural? That's what I wanted to know first off. So Dulce is an actual place. It's in New Mexico, and it's the site where the supposed deep underground base is supposed to be located nearest. This base is populated and run by a joint effort of humans and aliens. Now, Dulce is very near the New Mexico-Colorado border, and I looked at it on Google Maps, and then I got distracted by the actual, Google Earth look from the satellite. I was checking to see, if anything looked particularly odd on Google Earth, then I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. So anyway, the population of Dulce is about under 3,000 people. It's the tribal headquarters of the Jicarilla Apache Reservation. And I think the war part of Dulce Wars refers mostly to the incident that happened in the base underground with the military shooting and killing human staff, maybe some aliens, who had formed a resistance movement to expose the truth about the illegal, immoral activities that were going on in the base, but somehow, I guess, somebody snitched on them, somebody got wind of it, and started to take them out. Now, why, if it's really there, why is that base even there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, just real quick, and I know you'll get further into this.
Sure.
I had heard that the base had been started between 1937 and 38 by the Army engineers, and over the years it was enlarged. Most recent work was completed like 65 to about 66.
Again, in that very shortly.
Yeah, to connect tunnels to the Page base in Arizona. One site to another site of older underground facilities. The Four Corners base is called Parisia or something like that. And most of the native Indians living in that area are aware of the base and could tell us about the underground life forms that frequently spotted near these communities like Bigfoot and et cetera, et cetera. So
I think they've had run-ins and sightings, and they saw stuff in the sky. I read about, some of their ancestors.
That's
even
why
speaking about run-ins with these guys.
The Indians are probably really connected in the sense of experiencing these life forms in one way or another. So anyway.
So this all goes back to as far as President Grover Cleveland, that since Cleveland, all the presidents up to now have known about these bases. They've known about the alien life, and they've been part of a conspiracy to keep it quiet. So these aliens that are under there are reptilians, and they have a hierarchy of it's most high, and worker class, but then they also have short or small grays that they somehow bring into being that do a lot of the work. So that's who we're talking about when we're talking about aliens down there. So they had a pact since Grover Cleveland's day. In fact, President Truman went to Mount Shasta in California, to somewhere underground under the mountain, when he became president, to accept the keys to the USA from the King of the World. I don't know who the King of the World was down there, but pretty strange stuff. So this all goes back to that, where it's this conspiracy of the knowledge of these aliens in these underground caverns and bases, has these roots all the way back to, like I said, Grover Cleveland. But President Eisenhower actually started the concept of having a treaty with them. And Colonel Philip Corso actually said, he served in on the Eisenhower National Security Council. Corso said, we had negotiated a kind of surrender with them, meaning the aliens, as long as we couldn't fight them. They dictated the terms because they knew what we most feared was disclosure. So we had this bogus treaty with them. Well, it was bogus on the alien side. They had no intention of keeping any of their word, because they didn't care about us, our culture, our lives, anything to do with us. It's all about them and what they want. But we still made this treaty with them. Now, in essence, this treaty said that the aliens could abduct some cows, cattle, some humans, and the government would look the other way, but the aliens had to state by name which humans they were going to take. So in exchange, our government gets technology from them, and they get to monitor all the aliens' activities. But of course, now if they're referred to as reptilians, Reptoid, Draco, they all refer to the same one. I think those are all interchangeable. But of course, these guys did not live up to this bargain. They took humans without telling anybody, and that became the first source of friction. Now, what's interesting is I learned in this book was how they got the cattle mutilation so clean and crisp and bloodless is because they were using some technology to cut between the cells, the cellular structure of the cells. So there was just, I guess, nothing to bleed or nothing to cause that kind of, if we were to slaughter a cow, it would just be nasty. But they did it sort of clean. But, so this treaty that, we put into effect was most likely led to these joint secret bases so they could develop experiments and technology and all kind of other underhanded, crazy things that sound very sinister. They did, allegedly, among just the first few things I found, it was technology developments, mind control experiments, genetic altering, experimenting on men, women, and children who are all abducted illegally. And that's just a few things. I'll get into more a little bit here. But among all that info that you hear about the terrible things is a lot of disinformation and things information put out there on purpose to really obscure the truth. And one of these conspiracies goes so far as back to, and this was in the book, to say that this all started because of a fascist cabal that has Nazi ties. They call it Bavarian Illuminati. That notion is somewhat backed up by Phil Schneider, who says he helped build 2 of these main bases in the U.S., and both of these bases have some significance to the New World Order, which is run by the Tall Grays, and one of these bases is Dulce. Okay, now, talking about Phil Schneider, he's the first name that pops up when you talk about Dulce base, and you're saying these bases may have began in the 30s. Well, I don't know if they already had below ground stuff already started. So my understanding is Schneider, I don't know if he was part of the groundbreaking of Dulce base or he was there to add to it.
Well, from my research, what I looked at was that you have the Army building levels of the base. And
wasn't it supposed to be like circular with spokes of wheel going outward to connect to other parts of other bases, other caverns?
Well, that's what I was going to get at, is you get the beginning of underground bases going so far under. And as the further they dig down, they eventually hit a area of natural caverns that stretch all over the place. So, in the beginning, it naturally could have been, building caves.
But the thing is, I don't know if Schneider was there to start it from the beginning, that there was nothing there yet and they were starting, or the base was already there and he was there to help expand it.
That's what I'm saying, is that you could have had bases that already had several levels, and so they wanted to add levels. Well, and that's what Schneider was going in and doing, was creating these tunnels.
I can only recount what I wrote or heard.
I'm adding 2 more cents to the wonderful universe. So basically you have bases that were started, and so they decided to dig deeper, and that's what Schneider was doing, was building out. Like, say for instance, initially when the Dulce base was built, it was only built so many levels.
Yeah,
and
maybe like the first 3 levels or something.
And if you have a base that's doing so well, and it's outgrowing its potential, then you just expand it. So in this case,
they said the first 3 laces are pretty dull. They're like,
right.
They're just like for the vehicles. They're administrative office. They're like, the first level security.
Well, that's
it's not till you get to 4 through 7 it gets really.
That's why when they asked the Dulce base security officer, Thomas Edwin Costello, when exactly was the upper, quote-unquote, upper human occupied level of the Archuleta installation constructed, and that's when, between 37 and 38, the Army engineers did that. And then, of course, over the years, it was expanded.
So Schneider must be part of adding on to
it.
he's
I guess, I hate to say expert, but he's, well-versed on creating these tunnels and expanding and creating these underground bases. Phil Schneider is.
Yeah, well, that's good. I got that cleared up.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I did learn about Schneider. So he corroborates what I read in the book, which was, so Schneider says that this base of Dulce is 2.5 miles deep with 7 levels.
Right.
Now, I read in this book and in various other places, in the early 1960s, they did a subterranean nuclear blast about 30 miles southwest of Dulce. This was part of what was something called Project Plowshare, but the operation, I think, was named Gas Buggy. And the cover story for Gas Buggy was they were trying to find natural gas pockets.
Gas exploration.
Yeah. So supposedly this was the beginning of the creation of the tunnel system to create an underworld city operated by humans and other creatures. Now, Phil Schneider, worked for the U.S. government. He was an engineer geologist, and he said he worked on part of the underground base in 1979. So this is where I got confused because there's 2 accounts of altercation, so hence Dulce Wars. He had a run-in, and then there was a separate run-in that happened down in the base, which is Costello's story. So this one is concerning Phil. So it was his job as the geologist engineer to examine the type of rocks that are down in these holes so they can figure out how to best blast their way through to start making these tunnels. And he first began to suspect something was a bit odd when he noticed the presence of Green Berets and Special Forces on the construction site. Now, what he didn't know, but maybe they did, I don't know, what Phil didn't know is that they were drilling down right on top of natural caverns. So when he headed down a blasted out hole for the first time, he went down with, I guess, a few other people. They found themselves face to face with aliens, grays, 7-foot grays in the large cavern, and they were smelly.
Yeah, the smell is so vile, is what he said.
And it took him by surprise. I don't think he was ready for it, but why else would they have berets and special forces if they weren't ready for something? Phil freaked out and shot one with his pistol. Now, goodness knows I'm not anti-gun or anything, but what is a engineer geologist doing with a pistol on a regular routine construction site? I mean, I don't know. That just seems slightly strange to me, but, you know, it's not like I'm anti-gun or anything. But so I've heard different counts. Between 40 and 60 people were killed. In the book it says 40, but somewhere else it's 60, but I don't actually trust that site, so we'll say 40. So he said a Green Beret saved his life, got him back up to I assume like an elevator or lift, back up to safety. But I don't think this is the Dulce battle. I think it's part of an ongoing conflict with aliens down there. But I think it refers to Schneider's incident and also Thomas Costello's incident. But Phil said there's an ongoing war under the Otraleta Mesa, and it's been going on since they started the construction, you know, in one form or another. He said there are 129 underground bases in the U.S., and that's part of the 1,477 bases across the world underground. Now, this seems to go right in hand with what Dr. Stephen Greer says. Greer says, in a lot of the videos I've watched by him, he says, nothing of any significant military importance is above ground. It's either deep underground or it's in orbit. So you'll not see anything of any significance on like Google Earth or a satellite. If it's really super important and secret, it's underground or in the air where you can't get to it.
Right.
So that's so what do we know? How do we know any of this information that is out there, that was in the book, that's in these videos? Well, it is been reported to mostly by people like Phil and another whistleblower that actually worked down there, which I'll get to in a minute. But again, some of the reports of human rights violations is that the humans that they kidnap, they either will do experiments on them, human animal hybridization, like humans and animals, animals and animals, and some of them are being kept for food supplies for these ET or aliens, and or that could all be lies, part of the disinformation campaign, which was part of tactics to discredit Benowitz, to keep all the public eye rolling. Just like the crazier the story, the more people won't believe it. So it could just all be a bunch of lies, just for us to laugh at and look the other way, because nobody wants to get labeled as a tinfoil wearing wingnut, you know. So,
and as we go on, I find it interesting how, you know, we were talking about this earlier over some delicious Whataburgers, how everything seems like it's weaved together in some aspect, you know. Everything cross stitches together in stories.
Well, isn't the whole story where it started I think what tipped somebody off on all of this was the mutilations, the cattle mutilations.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't this where Molten Howe came down and they found the bloodless cattle, and they couldn't find any tracks, and they couldn't find any signs of animals coming to attack, no humans. And it was baffling, and it's because they're located next to this base where the government said, sure, take some cows, just, don't
Sure.
leave any evidence behind. And
that kind of goes back to when we were reading the
so everything is
Skinwalker Ranch thing.
Yeah, everything's tied.
Of things coming out of portals and things, creatures similar to Bigfoot.
I have never since this day, but then I don't listen to a lot of this stuff, but I have never since this day heard or read anything as wild as the Skinwalker Ranch story.
That is a very...
Unless you count Lovecraft, which is fiction, for sure.
And we did a show on the Skinwalker Ranch, but Surlana, we're, I guess, at the top of the hour. So let's take our break. So here is Spaceboy doing a Spaceboy commercial. Hello, everyone. This is Spaceboy of Spaceboy Music and Spaceboy Universe. But I want to talk to you about Spaceboy Music. My newest release, Unique Technique, is out, and you can get it at spaceboymusic.com. That's right, 17 wonderful tracks you can listen to, and you can even ask K28 how he enjoys that music. It is out on spaceboymusic.com for just $10. It's a digital download, and you can instantly download it to your iTunes, your phone, and all that other good stuff to listen on the go. So go check it out, spaceboymusic.com. The new Spaceboy Music album, Unique Technique, it is there for you to download for just $10. So go check that out, shall you?
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Now here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
Indeed, you are listening to the SBU Network, and you can find us on the SBUnetwork.com. Every week there's always something new happening, whether it be Spaceboy Universe, Spaceboy Music, or even the Quantum Hologram Matrix, which can be heard every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I believe.
That sounds good.
8, something like that. I'm sure we'll be corrected later. So, as we were talking, we were finishing up our first segment, and now we're about to talk about Thomas No, I know I'm going to butcher this again.
I can't remember if it's Castello or Costello. Sorry, it's a little lazy on my part. So
Castello? I think it's Castello.
Who's he? He is a gentleman that rose through the ranks and got to be head of security of Dulce Base. Anything that had to do with photographs or the surveillance cameras on the base, he was in charge of that. So, in the Dulce Wars book, it's his whistleblower testimonies that support at least the existence of the Dulce base, if nothing else that went on in there. The precise cause of the confrontation that's the quote-unquote war isn't clear, and the book didn't really clear that up. But according to Costello, they had, in that base, it was the human rights violations that he couldn't just stand by and allow that to happen. Plus, there were some sympathetic ETs, the reptilians, that wanted to help the imprisoned humans. And he says a resistance movement was growing between these ETs and other human security guards. Now, something Schneider gets criticized about is that he isn't telling the whole truth as he knows it, or maybe he's had a corrupted version from the disinformation, because there's some discrepancies between what he says and what Costello says. But Schneider did not refer to the base as a joint facility. He said it was a U.S. military facility that had been accidentally built on top of an ET base, whereas, this book says no, it was done purposely as half ET, half, human run. So I think it's unlikely that it was accidentally built on an ET base, because why else would they have special forces in Green Beret? It's like they were expecting trouble. But it suggests that Schneider was only partially aware of the truth during that time and what occurred on the lower levels. Now, what we have not talked about, because it's sort of well known, is what happened to Schneider. Do you know what happened to Schneider?
Phil Schneider?
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly he... Okay,
did you know this story?
Well, they say that he committed suicide, but the evidence, I don't know, it leaves you with reasonable doubt to believe that
his ex-wife certainly had lots of doubt.
He was killed. He was found with, I guess, rubber tubing, choking, had, wrapped around his neck. And if I was thinking about committing suicide, that's not one way.
There's easier ways.
Yeah, the jumping off a chair with a rope kind of thing, and I'm not trying to give anybody ideas, but
he was in a wheelchair.
Yeah, but still, shotgun, a pistol, slitting your wrist. This is terrible. I can't believe we're talking about this, but those are different ways.
But it's like part of building a case.
Right.
Of why would you choose that way?
Yeah, because it seemed very strange. And then what's interesting is through the courses of Phil Schneider's, limited conferences that he gave, he always said at some point in there, if I ever come up dead, don't believe it.
Well, he said, if you ever hear that I've committed suicide, I've been murdered.
Right, exactly.
So he had established that to the public. His ex-wife knew about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so she already had doubt in her mind about it. And she said, I want to see his body. And they wouldn't let her see it because they said, oh, no, because he's decomposed. It's too disturbing. She's like, no, I want to see it. So she got to see his body, and she's like, no.
Even
she didn't believe the suicide either.
Even some of the space cadets out there are agreeing. I think Dino was even saying that he saw autopsy photos and scene photos. Phil was murdered. So there is a consensus out there that people believe that he was murdered. And I'm going to tell you right off I have reasonable doubt that he could have done that to himself. So, and then between that and between him telling people that if you ever see this come up as suicide, don't believe it. I've been murdered. Mm-hmm. And the man, when he tells the story of going down into the cavern and facing those aliens, and then if you look at in some of the interviews he does, you could see, I guess it's his left hand where he's missing digits. Mm-hmm. And
well, he talks about when he was down there. We kind of glossed over this, but when he went down there and he fired his pistol, this gray shot out some kind of beam from its own being, and it like melted his shoes off. It burnt off his toenails.
Busted his chest open.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how the guy was alive. Basically, it seems like he barely made it out of there, and he suffered from all kind of physical ailments. Like, there were so many things wrong with him, I couldn't even get them all listed. But he had ended up living by himself. He had in a wheelchair, and the way he was found, the way he was oriented, seemed odd for suicide.
Right.
But we kind of glossed over that.
Yeah, did gloss over that, and look for more of the story with Phil Snyder in our upcoming episode on the 28th when we talk about underground bases, which is kind of funny how we're talking about this tonight, which will tie into
because there's
that story.
Many more.
Yes, there's many more.
I want to learn more about Pine Gap. I don't know anything about that.
Right. So, but I guess, do you have more information on Castello? I see you've got me all twisted up on this name. Castello?
Well, a little bit, because I want to say that everything he said gets corroborated by this next person. But basically, Schneider, just to finish him off, the more likely scenario is that Schneider had to assist the U.S. military forces to access the innermost layers of Dulce facility, and some of these have been closed off, and that's where the cause of this dispute lay. Now, Schneider had quit working for the military after 1993. He was convinced there was a plot perpetrated by the Tall Grays to develop a new world order, and they would control through the United Nations. That's when he began his public lectures, and you can find them on YouTube. He was found dead in 1996, but the circumstances of his death are questionable as being labeled suicide. Now, another guy, Dr. Michael Wolff, he said, yeah, a fight did happen there underground in Nevada, but the difference is being those ETs were prisoners, not guests. I didn't get the full story on that, but another person who can corroborate there was something like a fight or down there was Bob Lazar. He said he read about it, the incident at Dulce, because it was part of his briefing documents when he was required to read prior to working on ET craft over in was it Nevada, where Groom Lake is.
Yeah.
So I mean, now you know who Bob Lazar is.
Yes, and another stitch in the quilt of this whole thing.
All right. Now another person who says she can kind of back all this up is someone I never heard before. And that's a woman called Sherry Shiner. And she says, quote, there is a fascist Bavarian Illuminati-backed underground or shadow government led by the corporate military-industrial complex, which is fighting against traditional America on its own soil. Now, that's the overall conspiracy we've all kind of heard for as long as we've been aware of conspiracies. Is, Illuminati runs, shadow government runs everything. But she had, what are you pointing at? Those are estimates, babe. I don't know things.
This is behind the screens banter. I keep bringing it back to, Costello. And, did you find more information about him? I mean, anything further beyond that? I mean, I know there was a Q&A that that somebody did. And do you have any of that information before we get into Sherry? Because, I mean, Sherry is very interested in
down here. Scroll down below here. Here we go. The Q&A session with Costello reveals that, Mount Shasta is another one of these big installations. He says there are two nations occupying the U.S., just like Sherry Shiner said, traditional grassroots America that was established by founding fathers, led by an electorate, and the fascist Bavarian Lodge, backed by underground nation, led by corporate government. He says, think about this. There's a left wing and a right wing. We have a left-wing liberal Democrat and right-wing conservative Republican. Like a dragon has a left wing and a right wing. They're two different wings, but they're controlled by the same beast. Says the war is really between Christian Constitutional Republic of America and the Luciferian cult-based socialist empire of Bavaria. I guess that's where the Illuminati was born, Bavaria. Now, Costello says in some of these spacecrafts, because he got to go in these ET spacecrafts, is the floors of the crafts were spongy and the lighting in there was purple-pink color. But he was told by the aliens that when it's in flight, the floor becomes rigid and the light turns bright blue-white. So I'd be interested in why the floor does that.
Right, changes.
Yeah. The interior of one of these crafts is scaled down compared to the size of an average human. The halls are curved and narrow, but the inside appears bigger than it looks. Sound familiar?
Yeah, the TARDIS.
He even said some of the outermost sections of this craft looked alive. And
I hate to interrupt here.
No, it's
reminds us of when we were talking to David Adair with when he mentions about the engine, which we didn't get to really discuss during that show, but we talked to him on the outskirts of that show about the engine, and it had this biological.
Persuade him back.
Yeah.
At some point.
Oh,
anyway,
by the way, he is not the person that's going to be on the Force. So
no,
if you thought
else.
that, it's somebody else.
Somebody not been on before. He says that these reptilian Draco guys are in charge and consider humans beneath them, and they have their own worker caste. And these worker Dracos are very cautious and believe humans to be hostile. So whenever any of these human staff in the base actually showed, respectful, courteous behavior, it baffled them because they were told we were just terrible people.
Right.
So Costello says that they do risky things with human life just to see what would happen in the space. If a cure happens, due to some experiment or research they did down there, they'll say, hey, we found a new cure after years of research at some well-known lab. And he was told at first the humans that he saw there that were restrained or in cages or, were insane people, and he should not speak to them because it would destroy years of work. And it wasn't until one day he was making his rounds, and one of these captive humans spoke to Costello. And he says, my name is so-and-so, and I've been kidnapped, and I'm here against my will. So Costello kind of didn't interact with him. He just went on about his way. But when he got back home, he contacted somebody to run a check for him. And sure enough, that guy that spoke to him was listed as missing. Now, when he gets back to work the next day, that guy is gone. No explanation. Even though I don't think he even had anything, he didn't talk to him or anything. But shortly after that, 9 other security officers requested an off-the-record meeting with Costello. And they wanted to talk about some of the evidence they had that the humans there were all captives against their will. And they said, we know you could turn us in right now, but one of the guys said, I would rather lose my life in trying to get this truth out than lose his soul by not doing anything at all. And he says that was the remark that changed Costello's mind about keeping quiet. Now, there were some of the other reptilians that knew about this plot and supported it, that they were trying to get the truth out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first evidence that Costello had that some of these beings can have individual thoughts, because up until now, he had said that they work as a hive mind and they can actually read humans' thoughts too. So that one of the ways that they could be defeated is if you could get one of them by themselves and sort of reprogram them to have a more individual. Actually, Spinowitz talks about this. The Reptoid Gray's work as a hive mind.
Mm-hmm.
They have no care, concern, or compassion for humans. And the theory is if you could sever them from one of them from the collective and reprogram, they may maintain enough self-awareness and a degree of emotionalism away from the collective. Does that sound familiar to you in any way?
Mm-hmm. Sounds like the Borg.
Specifically, it sounds like that episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where they find a Borg that's injured off by itself. They bring it back to the ship, they repair him, and teach him about individuality, and basically screw him up.
Well, first they were going to use him as a weapon and send him back to the collective. But yeah, they give him sense of purpose, individuality, his own self.
And that, in a way, is like using as a weapon, because he got back to the collective and he put this notion of individualism in their heads, and they just came unglued and was looking for direction and a leader, and they went to what's that guy's name? Data's evil twin.
I'm starting to laugh because I just realized that we're both starting to do this Trek thing again, and you've got your Star Trek shirt on. I've got mine, 2 different Star Trek shirts on.
2 different Star Trek shirts.
Yeah, see, look, so...
It's my weekend shirt.
All roads lead back to Star Trek.
Well, it makes you wonder, where do the Star Trek writers get this info from?
That and Gene, where he came up with it.
Gene too, Gene Roddenberry.
Mm-hmm.
So, basically, back to Costello and these guys.
Mm-hmm.
What he was able to do before, what hit the fan.
Yeah.
Is that he managed to get out something like 7 minutes of black and white video and some still photographs. And this is all and maybe some hand-drawn diagrams and pictures. So I saw, this is called the Dulce papers. That's what all those are called. And I looked at it, unless I was looking at like a bogus site. I mean, you can see the video thing on YouTube. It's so... I don't know how he did it. If he didn't take it from the surveillance cameras, then if he was doing it with some other covert little device, maybe I'd understand why it's all kind of difficult to look at, poor quality. You can't make out anything. You can't tell what anything is. It's just sort of vague shapes and some kind of strange movements. It doesn't really, it's not a definitive, ooh, there's an alien. And then the video I saw, I don't know if a third party, something got a hold of it and tried to make it more cinematic, artistic, horror film-like. It just seems a little hokey.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't take that stuff seriously. And then the photos I've seen were photos I have seen for years and years all over the internet. So it just looked like a random collection of alien photos from across the internet. So I don't know if I can take that seriously.
Yeah, I think the saturation of
Lore.
pictures,
Thank you, bloke from Oz.
Yes.
Data's evil brother was Lore.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of Lol, and that was his daughter he created, who was very good.
Yes.
So Costello said, these security officers came to him, and they wanted to get this truth out. And so, in a turn, they convinced Costello, okay, we got to get this out. And he was able to get the Dulce papers out. So they met, after hours, but somehow this got out. Word of this little resistance cell got out. If someone snitched, I don't know what happened, but some of the worker reptilians knew about this plot and supported it. So maybe it could have been them, maybe it could have been another human. Maybe they got their thoughts read by accident. Somebody wasn't keeping... Costello always talks about keeping his thoughts straight, keeping his, mind on the job so they don't,
probe his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now he talks about what happened. He says, this took place at the exits of the base. They had a list of humans and reptilians, their names, and they executed everyone on that list. None of the worker castes had weapons, neither did the humans that worked in the labs. He said it was a total massacre, and someone had to have betrayed them for them to know about this idea. He reports shortly after he made it out, his wife and son went missing, and then he believes his brother is still missing to this day. And if they haven't already executed them, they're being held in another underground base. He said, no one gets out of there without an implant, because it helps with the telepathic communication among aliens and humans. No one escapes that. That's basically it for Costello, and I was going to go back to Sherry Shiner, but we can do that after take a break, or...
Well, we've got a few more minutes before we take a break here, and I just find it interesting that, he made it out, and to your research, you could not find anything that if he was still alive or not, but, since he hasn't been heard from...
I have some criticisms about the book. Now, I'm not an editor. I've never been a book editor, but I was an English major. Written tons of papers, researches, conference papers, essays, book reports. I'm not saying that qualifies me, but it could have used a lot of editing. It just seemed like it was kind of all over the place. Some of it might have been an error when it was transcribed to Kindle edition. There could have been a technical glitch, because it seemed like I kept seeing the same pieces of information, like literally the exact same word for word paragraph in different parts of the book over and over. So I don't know if that was a technical error on that part. I would have to get the book we actually have and try to find it, see if it makes more sense, because it was just all over the place. And when he tries to emphasize something, there'll be pages and pages that are in all caps. And I just...
Let me ask you this, since you're definitely an avid Kindle book reader. Do you find, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the subject matter that we're talking about tonight, but across the board with Kindle books, do you find that the editing is less than what it used to be in, say, reading a book that you purchased?
It depends. Now, if I purchase, even if it's Kindle Unlimited, if I purchase a book that has been published through a publication company, they've got people on board, professionals who can do that. And there's usually very little problems as far as, glitches, technical glitches with the book, spelling errors, grammar, missing. If you are self-publishing, because you and I could get a book right now and pop it up there, it just has to go past their review process and boom, you're up. You don't have to have an editor.
Right, and that's what I was getting at was that according to your reading, so when you've read something like, I'm just going to go out, Simon & Schuster, reputable company kind of thing. Where
very little to no issues, but I have read fan fiction on fanfiction.net that I was like, hey, this is a good story. It's well written far as plot, and it's got the right language for the, but they just need a little help with some editing, and they need to, because like they'll have some anachronisms because they don't know, they didn't research, and like all you got to do is change that word and it makes it a little less anachronistic. But no one has to do that if you don't want to. And that really takes me out of the experience, whether it's fiction, whether it's nonfiction. The more errors you have, whether it's on your side or it's the technical side of Kindle, it really pulls you out of learning or being immersed in a story.
So getting back to this book, you feel that maybe this was like self-published in some way.
Well, I think actually maybe it was self-published, but actually they made a Kindle, like maybe Amazon made the Kindle version. I don't know who initiates a book that's been out for years in print to Kindle. So I'm not sure how that works.
So I know that this book weighs heavily on your mind because of how you go from, like you just mentioned, typeface, where it's all in caps, and then.
Well, they did that for emphasis, like, can you believe this? I'm like,
can you get it in your mind?
Like 2 or 3 pages in all caps. I know it's not a big deal, but yeah,
it
gets on my nerves.
Bringing it back, how does that affect the impact of the story, though? I mean, what you're reading.
Well, they're trying to get across. They're trying to make an impact. Like they're doing, they're one of the things, like they said. I didn't mention this; it's a bit graphic, but they say there's these big vats down there of this amber liquid that have like human body parts, arms, legs, hands floating in it, and it's being constantly stirred by a robotic arm. Now they say that is they're trying to render them down for food for these Dracos.
Right.
And I'm thinking, let's suppose all this is real and those little beings are real and they're using us for food. Why would our government let them use us for food? I mean...
Well, I tell you what, since we're at the bottom of the hour, let's take our break, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, and definitely get into Sherry Shriner, because I can't hold the floodwaters back on you on that one. And so you're listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU Network. Don't go anywhere.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe. Now here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
No, Surlana, I do not want to smell that. I've had enough M&Ms.
You need to come over here and smell this bag.
I don't.
It's really interesting.
I'm done smelling it. It's stuffed between the cookies you've made me. I look like Santa Claus right now.
Oh, was just trying to be nice.
I know you are, and I appreciate it when you're trying to be nice.
Because it doesn't happen often.
Yes, it doesn't. So, hey, welcome back. We're live on Spaceboy Universe, and I'm Spaceboy, and you are...
Cold.
Oh, I saw you tweeting in there, or talking to the Space Cadets.
Not complaining. I'm just saying... It's cold in here. He says it isn't, but he's not from this planet. So
anyway, so speaking of other planets, we were.
I wanted to talk about briefly Sherry Schreiner. I'd never heard of her before, but she cropped up when I was doing this research. Outside of the book.
And just as a footnote, to remind me that I want to touch upon Phil Schneider again. Because of what we were talking about during the break.
Well, do you need to go ahead and do it now?
Well, let's talk about it.
Go ahead and do it now, because it fits in.
The thing is, with Phil Schneider, when he would give his things, is, what's the one thing that we always say? Consistency. Is that, this goes back to like Stan Romanek. He was consistent in his story and everything about it. So when something major came along, we were like, there was reasonable doubt. Now, with Phil Schneider, consistency. You see evidence of his hand. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see his story, although sometimes may seem a little dry, but fantastic as it is, it's always the same story.
Right,
it never deviates.
When I listen to his videos, they're not many. Mm-hmm. He's very intense. He's very abrupt. He's not terribly PC. Mm-hmm. When he did the question and answers on one of his videos, they're like, sir, we need to get on. I mean, he's just very he doesn't care about your feelings. He's got to get this information out. It's like getting it out is more important than anything else. So he's very, I don't know, I guess he was very dedicated to his message. So, but he was a little irritating about it, but I get that it was important. So,
but like I said, to wrap this part up, is that one, his story is consistent. And it doesn't deviate. It doesn't, over time, get more embellished, making it greater and greater. I mean, the story is what it is. And from that angle, I have to look at that as his story being very plausible in the sense of what happened to him. And then, of course, ultimately, the death.
Unless something really traumatic happened to him and he believes that's what happened to him, it's hard to know.
That is true. Point taken.
Just to give it another opposite point of view.
So I'm tired of holding you back on Sherry.
Oh, not
that I'm doing it on purpose or anything. But
I think the show's better when we talk.
Yes.
As a conversation.
Yeah, it is. Everybody learns a little bit more. So let's go in and talk a little bit about Sherry.
Like I said, I never heard of her before. I don't know what her credentials are. I just found this document of hers online that she wrote. And there is a video on YouTube where a guy actually reads the entire document she wrote. So if you want to look for that on YouTube, it's out there if you don't want to read the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Go YouTubing.
So Schreiner, believes that the humans working in the base have been taken over and controlled by the aliens. So it's not just people who are kidnapped, but the ones who are working in the lab, helping with experiments, have also been compromised by the aliens mentally. Now, this is where it gets into the freaky deaky stuff here. So, she says they have been possessed and assimilated into an alien collective. Again, does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Borg. Again, where did the Star Trek writers get these ideas? It makes you wonder. So, the aliens there are controlled by Satan himself, Schreiner says. I'll get into that in a second. Now, Schreiner kind of backs up what Branton says with the Dulce Wars book. She says that our government made a treaty with the alien forces. And she's the one that said there's a treaty that came before Eisenhower under Roosevelt called the 100 Treaty. And that was an agreement between the aliens and the U.S. government. And she says, now, right after they signed this treaty, the infestation of aliens of the U.S. government began. She corroborates Branton's book when she says that in these underground bases, our government allows aliens to mutilate animals, kidnap humans in exchange for anti-gravity technology, microchips, lasers, free energy, and more. So in exchange, we agreed to deny their existence, cover up their crashed UFOs, lie about human abductions, animal mutilations, and keep a lid on all alien presence in this country, while these aliens mutilate animals for body parts, abduct humans for experiments, hybridization, soul scalping, I'll explain that in a second, chip implantation, mind control programming, dreamscape manipulation, genetic engineering experiments, crossbreeding, cloning, harvesting for body parts, and using humans as food.
Mm-hmm.
Just like all the terrible things you could think of. Now, Schreiner also said the Dulce base is a known biogenetics lab. Now, I've seen that on other videos and documentations and in the book. But they also do atomic manipulation, cloning, human psychic research, mind control, human and animal crossbreeding, all that good stuff. She says, and I've read this elsewhere, that Dulce base is the second largest reptilian/gray base in the U.S. And it serves as a central hub to other bases in the U.S., but the largest base is in Taos, New Mexico. Do you need me to do something?
Continue.
Okay. You're looking at me weird.
I'm thinking about this is the point I'm going to just tell the audience. We're going to be opening the lines up here at the top of the hour, and just to recall that number, it's 844-734-7286. That's 844-734-SBUN. So just wanted to make sure that we were on target with Surlana. So I apologize.
But I have not opened the phone banks officially.
Yeah, not officially, but make sure that...
We'll do it during a break.
Yeah, we'll do it during a break. Okay.
Now, that's what intrigued me. Is she said that Dulce's not the biggest, but it is a hub for other underground bases. And it seems to be that New Mexico is really more riddled with these underground bases. And I don't know if that is because New Mexico has more of those large natural underground caverns that they can just, build upon that and go on through.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it because these quote-unquote aliens are already down there and they can just build down to them, and I don't know. So...
Well, it's been said that these tunnels have been occupied by the Draco for centuries, and the Draco humanoid and reptilian humanoids have used caverns and tunnels for centuries, and it wasn't until later when the Rand Corporation laid plans to enlarge these caverns, and I guess the two met. So.
Yes, exactly. The Rand Corporation is heavily involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't bother to look up what the Rand Corporation does, but I've heard about it, heard that name all my life,
A lot of technology stuff,
mm-hmm.
and yes.
So Schreiner says Dulce has shuttles, boring machines, large paved underground highways, electric vehicles, UFO maintenance gear, and maglev trains that go at the speed of sound, and some of those travel all the way across the world, and they'll stop at international borders but underground and
mm-hmm.
get checked in and out. But she also says the rest of the base, the description of the base, is straight from someone's nightmare. Again, this is where huge vats of floating body parts stirred by a robotic arm, cages with men, women, and children, mutated humans with multiple limbs, animals that have been crossbred like a cat and a rabbit, or as they call the cabot, that they spotted outside the base somewhere. Tall, 7 foot or more humanoid bat creatures. Humans in cold storage. Saw in that video, supposed leaked video, that looked like some kind of alien egg pods, but you couldn't tell it was in them. It was sort of like a dark purpley blue.
Mm-hmm.
They look like a bunch of eggplants or something. Now, how does she know about this? She says the Lord showed it to her in a vision. She says, now, this will intrigue you because I know you've heard about this in another story.
Mm-hmm.
She says that these aliens down there have an insane desire to have human bodies as their own. So they perfected an ability to take a person's soul out of their body and put it elsewhere, and it gives them access to a human body devoid of a soul. The body is a shell, a carcass, and they can take it over and possess this body and use it for themselves, and this is termed as walking in.
Mm-hmm.
There are two types of walk-ins. Now, these aliens can walk in and possess a live human body or a dead one, or in this instance, a live human who had their soul removed and their body was taken over and walked in by an alien. Like she said, they could take your soul, put it in a shoebox, and take your body, or just get rid of this. I can't get my head around that.
Well,
that the soul is a physical thing you could remove and stick in a shoebox. And
I've mentioned this before because I'm kind of interested in the subject matter.
I know you have something to say about it.
Because it leads back to the stories that I've heard from Linda Moulton Howe. And just to recap this, your assignment, Space Cadets, is to let Linda know that we'd like to have her on the SBU show. In fact, we're going to be talking about Linda on the 21st, and her stories and everything. And it would be wonderful to have her as a guest, or even just to talk in and step in for a moment, just to say howdy and say a few things. But let her know on Twitter and Facebook that we want to talk to her. But getting back to the story at hand is that she has brought up this before about these bodies being soul containers.
She mentioned something about, or somebody had contacted her about their abduction experience, that they had seen containers that had souls in them, and they were taking souls and putting them in other bodies so that that person could come back and live more life in another container. It wasn't necessarily for devious purposes. They were trying to help people cross over and then keep moving on, like recycling souls. I think that's what that was, but I haven't heard it in a while. You want me to continue, or
what's that?
You want me to continue, or are you distracted over there?
No, I'm engaging our audience as you speak, like you do.
Don't stalk. Please don't stalk. Don't harass. Be politely enthusiastic. Do not bother people on social media. Be polite.
Just be polite. Be the nice space cadet you are. But just know that we would love to get her on, and if we can, that you benefit from this, Space Cadets. You get to hear engaging conversations with us and our guests. So, I'm
be polite. Do not harass.
Please continue, Surlana.
Okay. I just caught that in chat.
Yes, I know. I'm trying to.
I know some of y'all are trying to be funny, but it worries me sometimes. Y'all know the things you say. Okay. But anyway, so the concept of walking in, taking out a soul and possessing it because maybe they don't have one. They don't have one of their own, and that your soul gets in their way.
First off, if you're saying they don't have one, I mean, how are they going into the body? They must have some kind of way.
I think that is they can't go in there because you're in there. You're occupying it.
No,
and
but
you
if
can fight them mentally, I guess.
But I mean, if you empty, they pull you out of the vessel, so to speak. How do they go in? I mean, do they use you as a puppet?
That was not explained. Yeah, they puppet your body. They're in your body. They're working it, I guess. I mean,
see, who is another person that could probably shed some light on this?
Solaris Blue Raven.
Yes, I was just thinking that right now.
Yeah.
And but I'm just intrigued by that. Could you imagine if you could take your soul out of your body and put it into another body? And I guess in that angle, I'm intrigued by that. But I'm not intrigued by the idea of having my soul taken out of my body and having some alien occupy it and me put into some shoebox, as you said.
I don't know how that gets done. It's going to get a little weirder here in a second. Mm-hmm. This sound, do you hear this sound? I apologize if you hear this sound.
Oh, my goodness.
That's me rubbing my hands together because it's cold. I'm about ready to turn over an oil barrel and light it on fire. Anyway, back to what Sherry Schreiner says. also agrees with Branton's book, which Branton's the writer of Dulce Wars, that these beings at Dulce houses the Dulce base houses some of the worst life forms this universe has to offer.
Right.
And that the reptilians, Dracos, what you're going to call them,
Mhm.
consider themselves to be native Terrans, and that humans are just squatters on the earth.
And once again, we've had the conversation about this before. If we're squatters on this earth, then where did we come from?
I think. Okay, let's take this into account. Costello, Schreiner, and Schneider and all them say that these reptilian Dracos
Mhm.
are liars, they're deceivers, they're devious, they don't care about us, they only care about their agenda. So, can you trust everything they say?
And I hate to go...
So, I don't think they are from here. I don't think they were here first.
And it kind of makes you wonder about the Bible and Adam and Eve, and the serpent came along and gave them knowledge. And, was the serpent deceptive in some way? And which could the serpent have, when you remember how I was talking about how the Bible, it tells a story. Could it be something much deeper that was the story beyond that, where you bring up topics of aliens and the serpent? And
Basically, you're just like, did Eve talk to an actual snake, or was it a snake-like being, a
Right.
reptilian?
Right.
Snake's a reptile,
Right.
And these reptiles they're green. I mean, they're not just green like lizard-looking. They're other colors too. So are
Right.
the grays. There's I'll jump into that. It's a little soon, but anyway. To finish up with Schreiner.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's amazing how these, we go back to the tapestry of the subject matter, and it's like a spider's web, if you will. You pluck one, it reverberates the whole web, and so it's very easy to jump from one to the next webbing, if you will. So yeah, let's continue with this, and I know that we've got a few more minutes left in this part.
Well, just to wrap this up, she says, and so does the Branton book, that Dulce is just one of many underground bases kind of in the southwest area. And they're all connected by these tunnel systems are probably for the maglev trains and electric vehicles. Now, they said Mount Shasta, as I mentioned, in California, is riddled with all kind of stuff. Yeah. Another place you can find, two other places you can find installations of these critters. Someplace called Panamint Mountains, and a little place none of you have ever heard of called 29 Palms, California.
Where the heck is that?
No, never heard of it. Must be some kind of desert place. Also, the Nordic aliens have bases near Death Valley, so they're attracted to desert places, I guess, places humans naturally don't want to hang out because it's somewhat inhospitable.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that makes sense.
So it kind of makes you wonder, you personally couldn't handle the contact in the desert heat.
No, I'm not bothered to not go back there again.
I felt right at home as far as the temperature and everything was concerned. Regardless,
it just wasn't wet.
Well, regardless of the first time, but even when I
take that heat out there in the desert and add moisture to it, that's basically Texas.
Well, yeah, it could be, and the humidity is what kills us.
It's more horrible.
But I digress. I was just trying to point out that your observations of me being alien-esque, there's something there.
Maybe you should live there part time.
Where, in the desert?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know.
And you can Skype me every night.
I can think of some different, better exotic.
K28 says Panamint Mountains is near Death Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kay.
So,
our California expert.
So what else do you have on this subject before we have to take that break?
Other than, she also talks about all the stuff that Costello snuck out with the Dulce papers and the schematics. And
so let me get this straight. He snuck out with all this stuff. He was almost caught and killed. It's a pretty amazing story. You know the jig is up, and you're trying to get out of this underground secured base, and you make it out. And didn't you mention something about some of the workers were implanted?
Well, Costello says nobody gets out without an implant, so
Right.
I don't know if he was implanted. It makes you wonder how it is they couldn't find him. But like I said, I couldn't find a definitive answer on if he passed away natural causes. Did somebody get to him and take him out? We don't know. Maybe he was implanted and they were able to track him easily, but he says they definitely got his wife, his son, and probably has his brother too. And if they're still alive, they're captives.
If that.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, Surlana, I guess if that's everything you've got on that part, why don't we take our break, and so that you can get the studio patched up and receive some calls in the next hour, and we'll continue to have our conversation.
I got at least one more page and a half.
Which is good. It's a very interesting story. And
we'll talk about Benowitz. Don't think I forgot about him.
Yeah,
so.
and even Anthony Sanchez.
Briefly, yeah.
We'll briefly mention him as well, and because we've mentioned underground tunnel systems, and which is this is a great show, because this show will lead into our show that we're going to have on the 28th, is a further discussion on underground bases. But I digress, Space Cadets. The phone number to call next hour is going to be 844-734-7286. That's 844-734-7286. That's SBUN. And that is a toll-free number, no charge to you. You can call through Skype, you can call through your landline, your cell number to that number, and it is toll-free. So with that, let's see here. I had to take a look over here, see what's next. Oh, yeah, that's a good song. You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network, so don't go anywhere.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. Now here are your hosts, Spaceboy and Surlana.
All right. We are back, and the phone number is open. That's 844-734-7286. 844-734-7286. That's the SBU number. So, we're going to start talking about the Nordics, Greys, and Reptoids, aren't we?
Yes.
All right, well.
It's actually, okay, that part of the book, I just kind of got glassy-eyed because it confused me quite a bit.
And what is it that confused you about it?
It was just, he named different factions, races, who didn't like who, and who, it was like, I don't know, reading a burn book from the Mean Girls or something. But I named this title of my notes, Nordics, Greys, and Reptoids, oh my. So Branton's book, okay, we've already got a call coming in. Do you want to take the call?
Well, yeah, why not?
You've been blasting the phone number, so.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
How are you?
Just fine. How are you?
And this is the lovely Bev, everyone.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say lovely, but yeah.
Oh,
Bev.
So what is going on? Would you have a good question for us, or you have something to add to the topic here, Bev? I mean, because we already know you love us, so we've established that.
Oh, of course. When did they have what do you call that? Like missing time?
Who?
Did they experience missing time?
Who it does?
I think in this situation, Bev, we're dealing with not of an abduction situation where these people have been abducted and missing time. Like, for example, when you had these people in these cages, there's no way to,
There's no witness testimony from them.
Because
they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone. They're, where did they come from? Because like Surlana was talking about this, one guy said, "Hey, I'm so and so," and
once you're there, you don't leave. I believe there's not like, oh, they're going to release you back into society. You're there for a purpose to either be experimented on or be food. Or, if this is
like
all true.
Like California, right?
Yeah, you can check out, but you can never leave. Exactly. Yeah. So, missing time,
And all the info we have are whistleblowers / survivors or people that have received visions of what goes on there. So I don't know if Sherry Schreiner ever had missing time. That's something that she didn't write about, and I don't know if Phil ever mentioned that.
But it is a valid phenomenon that has been documented in different UFO cases of people who have been abducted or have experienced some kind of encounter of some kind. So the phenomenon is out there, and it is. I guess it's a valid question to ask of missing time.
I just didn't read about it in this particular.
But now,
book.
What's interesting is that these security guards and workers have back at the base have there were certain areas of the base that were like labeled aliens only, and and no humans beyond this point. And so there were instances where humans would try to probe that area and try to go in.
Yeah, they wander off, try to get into really secure areas.
And there were some cases where the humans had made it in, and Costello had to request these humans back. Like, hey,
can you please give them back?
We know you have these humans. Come on, give them back. Be cool about it. And so there were situations like that came up. So. But as far as missing time, I don't think we had anything.
He also said a curious thing was they would work side by side, alien creatures and humans, do their work side by side, and they'd be okay. They'd get along at least. But the minute they left a lab, there was no interaction, no talking between species. That was it. You were done.
Wow.
Yeah. And the humans really resented that no-nonsense, get-back-to-work attitude of the Dracos.
Yeah, the Dracos were all, no soup for you.
Yeah, they were very kind of like Vulcan, Borg, take that both aspects of those and mesh them together, and you just get a really, really terrible person you don't want to invite to a party.
So I'm sorry it doesn't answer your question directly, but at least you gain some more knowledge about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, man, I never heard of the Dulce War. What is it?
Dulce Wars.
Was that Bob in the background?
Yeah.
Well,
Dulce. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's tons of videos of it on YouTube if you're interested in learning more.
What's interesting is, Dulce, New Mexico is just a sleepy little town that if you went through it, you wouldn't know anything the wiser as going through that town.
Oh, wow. That's done on purpose.
Yeah, and exactly, to give the illusion that there's nothing there, there's nothing going on.
Now, they say there is an entrance to every underground tunnel somewhere in every state in the Union.
Oh, my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Dino just said more Klingon-like.
It's kind of, a hybrid of those, maybe.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk more about...
Because Klingons do have fun. They do like to have fun.
And we'll talk more about the underground bases coming up on the 28th and how this kind of ties in what we're kind of talking in tonight. We didn't want to get too far into the underground bases elsewhere, and
right.
but it's more. It's a part of a big tapestry, if you will. That one thing crosses another. Because tonight we've talked about Bob Lazar, we've talked about Paul
No, I haven't.
Well,
yet.
We're getting to that, and Anthony Sanchez in just a minute.
He's the last one.
And so it's just interesting how all these people tie together, and But Bev, we appreciate you calling, dear.
Okay. Bob just said that the local Indians control access also.
Yeah, because it's their reservation.
And there's probably a kinship to these aliens because...
we mentioned that at the beginning. You might have missed it because we said, what's Dulce? Where is it? It says, well, it's owned by the Hickory Apache Reservation, their nation.
Oh, okay. Wow. It's interesting. I was on the edge of my feet.
Yeah, it's a good story. Even if it's not true, it's a good story. And I like good stories. They don't have to be real for me to be interested.
Exactly. Well,
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Well, I am.
Awesome.
I can't wait till the 28th now, February.
Well, you should say I can't wait until next Saturday, and then the next Saturday after that. And...
Well, I can't wait till Saturdays all the time.
Well, good. We love having you on the show, Bev, and it's always a pleasure.
Well, I love what you guys do.
All right, Bev. Well, we love you, and I guess we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, love you guys too.
Okay, bye, Bev.
Bye-bye.
All right. So where did we leave off, Surlana?
Let me see. How do I get back? I'm sharing the same screen with the notes and the call-in thing,
sure,
so I can see. Like I said, I'm trying to get to this day how many so-called alien races are out there. And if you listen to this person and you listen to Greer, he says this. If you listen to Wilcock, he says this. If you listen to so-and-so and da-da-da-da-da. Can we get some grand unification theory of alien races? I mean, not that I believe
and I
it
laugh
exists,
a little
but
bit about this because on April 22nd we have a show scheduled for that.
I guess I'm going to find out.
We're going to talk about alien races on the 22nd of April. We've got a show scheduled for that date. So
I'm sorry, I just glanced at chat and speaker, and somebody says, I doubt they have pants, Dennis. Now I have to know what this is about. So sorry about that. I'm going to have to check that out later. So I'm trying to get through the mire of this part of the book where he's talking about the races that are in play into relation of Dulce base. So the Dulce Wars book by Branton points out there are 3 alien networks on Earth, here doing whatever they do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, does this sound like teenager's diary? The anti-gray Nordic faction, the anti-Nordic gray faction, and the Nordic gray collaborators.
So 3 types of Nordics?
No.
Or wait, let's do this again.
The anti-gray Nordic faction. So you have Nordics who don't like the grays.
Okay.
You have grays that don't like the Nordics, but then you have another group that are grays and Nordics that get along and collaborate.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So kind of like this triangle of...
chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry.
Yes.
So, and within these factions are struggles that they're like, well, who should have the upper hand? The humanoids or humans or the reptoids? So I guess the humanoids or the Nordics because they look like Nordic people.
Mm-hmm.
Tall, blonde, and beautiful, which again goes back to this conspiracy theory that they contacted Hitler.
Right. And
Hitler's like, well, they're the super race, tall, blonde, and blue-eyed, so that's who we've got to be is tall, blonde, and blue-eyed, like the Nordic aliens. He's trying to please them.
Right.
So within these factions, they had a certain level of speciesism. Think racism, but with speciesism.
Right.
So the tall grays want to control us and the planet, but they need the Illuminati's connections and contacts to do this. And the Illuminati needs the aliens' mind control abilities, so they have sort of a love-hate relationship. They can't have one without the other, but from what I've researched now, I get the impression that when the aliens get what they want, they'll dump all the human stuff. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit more strange. There's those out there who would readily believe in a being from another planet before they would believe in a religious figure, God or Buddha or something like that. But that's where we're going now. So now some people talk about another element that's not necessarily an alien being physical. They're talking there is a race of paraphysical entities, some referred to as Luciferians, who are quasi-physical or etheric, and they oversee the humanoid reptoids. So you've got this idea that all these bad guys are actually just tools of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
So that would make them demons, wouldn't it?
One could see it that way, yes.
So get this, there is an actual federation out there in space, and it's of alien races, but I don't know if it's got the same agenda as the one we know in fiction. But it says this federation's been out there on the outskirts of the Sol system, battling these reptilians and greys, and they're we call them the benevolence races, benevolent aliens, and they're working with MJ-12, the blonde Nordic aliens. So here's some other odd tidbits. I'll finish off this section. There's another deep base in Deep Springs, California, where it says it has several entrances to the base. Now, only on 2 of these entrances, there's 2 entrances that you can do this. You can put a high-powered magnet on an entrance, and it will interrupt all the internal communications to the base. And then you leave it on for how long, you take it off, and that'll scramble things up. Now, this is really interesting. The aliens here are so allergic to high concentrations of sugar. So I'm thinking, maybe leave a bag of Skittles out there and it'll totally screw them up. So you could pour sugar around some of these locations and they won't come out. Now, the ones that are on our side, the benevolent aliens, they're on our side, but let me tell you what, they sound like the ultimate buzzkill.
Mm-hmm.
The good guys don't approve of motocross, auto racing, skateboarding, roller skating, football, baseball, hockey, processed sugar, recreational carbohydrates, recreational fluids, white bread, alcohol, illegal drugs, nicotine, recreational drugs, unjustified homicide, all the stuff that makes life interesting and fun. But they do approve of swimming, running, hiking, martial arts, and survival arts. So, they don't sound like a lot of fun to be around. But anyway.
Well, at least, if they're the good guys, at least you know where you stand with them.
So, California, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Oklahoma, and New Mexico all have big strategic base sites underground. Like I said, like Schreiner said, subterranean highways, paved roads, maglev trains that go at the speed of light, motor vehicles. Every state in the USA has an entrance to an underground base. Now, they're using some of the stuff they're doing down there. Some of the DARPA is using some of this stuff that's getting developed down there to manipulate people, to manipulate sleep patterns and heartbeats, rates, and mood control. And they can even induce program reactions in your mind. And again, our friend Solaris could probably tell us more about this. Now, here's where we get into another well-known aspect of the story, Paul Bennewitz.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Paul Bennewitz? Well, you probably know him from that documentary somebody made called Mirage Man. So he's a guy who was the head of this, I think, Thunder Scientific Labs. He was not a dumb guy by any means. He was a smart fellow. And so for 2 years, he observed strange lights in the sky. He had UFO sightings over the Monsanto weapons storage area and Kirtland Air Force Base. He photographed them, he made notes, and he developed a computer radio video link using a hexadecimal code that he came up with, he wrote, after tapping into ship-to-base frequencies from this base. So using this, he could see aliens on a video screen, and he developed equipment. So just to give you an idea who this guy was, he's not a dummy. He developed equipment for the space shuttles, and he's president of the Thunder Scientific Lab. So I think he's an above average intelligence person. Now, the government got wind of what Bennewitz was doing and what he knows, and tried to diffuse this with disinformation. I guess this is when they sent Richard Doty to him to feed him all this crazy stuff. So Paul said he had 2 years of monitoring and communicating with the aliens, and he learned firsthand how devious they were and not to be trusted, and that they don't keep their word on those treaties and all that good stuff. But there's tons of information about him out there. So I want to get to those 2 versions of those stories I told you about. And this might be something that Dennis was mentioning this in the chat. He says in the book there's 2 stories that are not really talked about. There's 2 versions of it, and it has to do with a Mormon temple worker. So let me bring that up real quick. It's, let's see. I was telling Spaceboy about this earlier because he had not heard about it. Sorry, it's on my Kindle. I'm trying to fire up my Kindle. Here we go. Some of these names I cannot pronounce. You'll have to bear with me. Okay. All right. So one of these stories is about a Mormon temple worker. He had penetrated an underground tunnel below the square in downtown Salt Lake City, Nevada, I guess. He traveled in this underground tunnel for a ways, and then he saw a series of underground catacombs, and he kept on going, and he ran into a lizard-like man. Again, awesome story, right? And I'm reading this directly from the Dulce Wars book by B. Branton, which you can get on Amazon. The creature attempted to attack him, but the man escaped and managed to find his way back to the surface. I'm always amazed at the ones that escape. I'm like, well, I want to know more. How did you do that? Because, what if we need to know? So this guy, first thing he does, he starts telling other people what happened. There's your first mistake, blabbing. The minute you start telling, people come, investigate, and they do this. He told people what happened, and soon afterward, the government arrived, as they do, in the area, and they went in and closed off as many tunnels leading to these sub-basements in that temple. So they went into this temple, got down in their basements, and started closing stuff off. And they came in and did it because, they're the government. They get to do that. So they had some heated debates over how much of the underground system was this church denominations within their purview to control. A similar dispute occurred on the southwest region where the LDS Church maintained a storage facility under Granite Mountain in Little Cottonwood Canyon. And it had within the upper levels of a vast network of caverns. And I don't know if that church knew they were there. We do have somebody in the queue. You want to talk to them?
Sure. Let's see who's the caller in.
Thank you for waiting, caller.
Who's this?
Hi. With the 800 number, you can't see it's my number?
No, can't see.
Oh, I can. I didn't. I was looking at the screen. I was looking at my Kindle.
Yeah, she was busy getting down. But
I only have 2 eyes.
So, Dino, how are you tonight, sir?
Yes. Oh, I'm pretty good. We're just a little bit antsy because the storm was real heavy this afternoon, and it's supposed to come back in the middle of the night. So I'm drinking Cabernet and having a good comfort meal, so hopefully I can sleep. But other than that, pretty good. And I was learning. Surlana, you've done a little more research on this than I have. And you said you're going to be going more into bases in general. So
only because I have to.
Oh, my goodness. The fact
oh, geez, come on, it's fun. It's interesting information.
Yeah, I mean, every time I research, that's one more thing I know that somebody else doesn't know.
The thing is that I bought this book, and I said, Surlana, you've got to read this book. It's very interesting.
Oh, that was about 6-7 years ago.
It was something like that. And I said, it's a short read. You can get through it fairly quick, the way you read. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you'll find it interesting from book.
You know what? I think it fell down behind my nightstand in the bedroom. I bet it's under my nightstand.
Well, we'll find it. But the thing is, you found the book interesting.
That just triggered me.
And of course, I
like a good story.
This is one of those nights, Dino, where you don't hear much from me. Is because I've gone through the subject matter myself.
Sorry.
And I'm fascinated when Surlana does her research, and she brings something to the game that somebody like myself, or maybe somebody that you've heard on Coast to Coast has said before. But since she hasn't really dived deep into this ocean of the UFO stories that we hear so often, she brings us something new, and this is what I like getting quiet for and listening to her kind of go. And some people accuse this show of being the Surlana show, but but that's cool. I'm good with that, because the show should go back and forth, because there's going to be shows where I'm more knowledgeable, like when we did the Jim Jones show. With the down in drinking the Kool-Aid and all that stuff, I was more knowledgeable on that show. But let me get back to what I was saying, is that Surlana does bring a little something extra that hasn't been heard before, and it's always fun and fascinating.
Like me criticizing the lack of editing on the book.
No, definitely, I appreciate it, because that is a good point, Space. So I'll try to walk the line carefully here. But basically, Phil Schneider, when I looked and did research into him a few years ago and saw those bad quality videos on YouTube, but still you can hear what he's saying. Yeah, and you can hear what he's saying. And he reminded me, the reason I listened to him is I really felt that the guy was sincere. And he reminded me of my uncle that I've spoken about before, who was on Omaha Beach and went into Nazi Germany. He was a sergeant major during the war.
Wow.
Not a military guy at all, just kind of he was an Aquarian guy, very smart, self-educated, was a machinist, tool and die guy, could do anything, built 2 houses with his own hands. He was just one of these guys that could do what 2 men could do, 2 smart men. And Phil Schneider reminded me of him, because a little bit, they looked a little like too. My uncle wasn't Germanic. You probably know, by the way, on an aside here, Surlana, in your research, that his father, he claimed, was a U-boat captain that was the first one captured during World War II, early in the war.
He was in that project, not the Manhattan Project. What's the other one, the crazy boat disappearing thing?
I can't believe you just made me go blank here. The
Philadelphia.
the Philadelphia experiment. Yes. Once again,
I think his father had something to do with that, or maybe I read that wrong. Or...
Well, they say that they turned his father. He was the first U-boat captain they had captured alive. That the Allies, the Americans, turned him and used him for intelligence, and that he willingly cooperated. And Phil Schneider said he didn't know this until his father told him on his deathbed. So it was a deep secret if it were true. So that kind of hit me and rang a bell, because my uncle, before he died, suddenly told me about his excursions in World War II, that even my father, his younger brother, said he never talked about that. And I asked him when I was like 30 years old, opened my big mouth, said, "Oh, I heard you were on Omaha Beach," because it was the anniversary of D-Day. And all of a sudden we were in his living room and he just started talking. He didn't say much. He was, he didn't mean to be a warrior in life, but he told me, he said, anybody after Pearl Harbor, and that's another subject, dealing with false flags, but even he told me way back in the day before I was ever into this stuff, he said, some people say that they let that happen so that America would get involved with the war. So he was a thinker. And Snyder reminded me of him a little bit. We don't have any Nazis in our background. We're all Scottish. But I mean, so Phil Schneider, when I was researching about 4 years ago, and somehow I went from one link to another, and somehow, I don't know how they did this, but a guy that I think was his friend that's still alive, that still pushes the story, had pictures. I don't know how he got them. I think they were crime scene photos of Schneider's death, and there it was unedited. It was kind of sickening, but there he was, tied, sitting in a chair, surgical tubing around his neck. He did always carry, he said in his lectures, a Walter PPK. I don't know if it was a 380 or a 9mm, but a neat little pistol that I think James Bond used to carry, that Walter PPK as a backup. And so to think, and he mentioned in a couple of his lectures that all he was saying he didn't care because he was patriotic and an American, and that he was loyal to his secrecy oaths. He said, I was never in the military, but I was a construction guy, and probably because of his dad, they felt they could trust him and gave him top secret clearances. And when you look at his it looked like an execution to me.
Yes.
It was, it's pretty evident that he didn't commit suicide. I'm not a cop, but I was shocked. They were full color photos taken in his Portland apartment right after. So it's pretty evident to me that whatever was going on, he didn't commit suicide. Yes, I think he had diabetes, and yes, he said, I don't want to gross the ladies out, but he would lift up his shirt at these lectures he was at to show that he had been scarred, from the belly button up.
He had a number of medical issues too, beyond that, and like you said, missing fingers. He had some neurological problems, and it was like a laundry list of things that had happened to him after that incident.
But it makes me wonder, but still, would that be enough to make him end his life? He seemed to be on a crusade, and people on a crusade don't want to end their own life. They want to get the truth out.
He seemed more determined
Yes.
than defeated.
And did you mention, I don't know, I was cooking dinner, but did you mention that he lost the 3 fingers? He claims. Now, this is the part that's shocking to me. We all in this community and the shows we've watched, the people in our audience, are kind of getting used to this. But can you imagine? I can't imagine working on a construction site, whether it's on a military base or not. And he claimed, because my uncle was, a construction type guy, I followed what he said. And he said, we used to dig. He said, I put in a couple of these bases, not just in Dulce, but he said we would dig 6-inch holes with our drill bits several feet apart. We'd do like a drill to break the ground, and we'd go down, and then we would excavate the middle part, and then we could go down a half mile. And that's the other thing. He was the first guy I saw that said they go down a half mile, a mile. I mean, think about that. I mean, I've seen construction sites in major cities, and skyscrapers amaze me, but they're out in the sunlight and all that. To go down a half a mile into the earth. Now, to me, there's no doubt, because San Francisco, for example, has several headquarters on the west coast of major construction firms, one of which is Bechtel,
yes.
Rand Corporation. But
they mentioned
Bechtel
that in my research too, Bechtel.
Yes, Bechtel. And if you look online, you can see that even 25, 30 years ago, there was a picture of one of their drilling machines. But, we've seen, if you do the research, the patents for these nuclear-based melting borers they have now. So the picture, in other words, that I saw that had like 20 Bechtel engineers all smiling and waving was like a train-sized car with diamond-shaped grinding bits all around. But that was 30-something years ago. So imagine what they have now.
I read, and I don't know if this was Dulce or they were talking about Area 51 underground, but one of these bases underground had been, the walls were smooth and dark. It felt like glass to touch. It was like black, kind of reflective. And some of these walls, you could put your hand through them because it wasn't maybe like, totally in this world or something. And it got pretty freaky.
Well, what I read is that these nuclear-based railroad cars, or boring machines, have a superheated head. They're powered by nuclear, and they can get super hot. They can liquefy the rock and
that's
soil,
how they did the
and
base.
then they have piping. Yes, and they have piping, and as they pass through, there's no leftover fillings like the old style where they'd have to dispose of them somewhere, and it melts it, and it actually deposits it as the machine moves forward on the perimeter of this, and it creates a glass-like surface, so you have a completely finished, smooth wall. And they also, what I have read, claim that in one pass they can do as big as 30 feet diameter. So you can imagine a tube 30 feet. You wouldn't feel claustrophobic working under there, 30 feet. I mean, most people's homes have an 8-foot ceiling. So they can do some pretty big stuff under there. And that seems to be a matter of record. I'm kind of doing two lines I thought it was. Let me stick to the original. So you're digging holes, Phil Snyder said, and if you can imagine, you're just get hired on a construction job if you didn't know. And he said then they went down about a quarter mile and their bits kept breaking. And pieces of like gears and whatever, looked like stuff that wasn't rock. It looked like, pieces of machinery were coming up with the drill bits and they were being destroyed. So that's when he said He went down on a gondola. They said, lower me down. He said he always had his Walter PPK with him on his belt. I mean, again, it's not California where you have to have a permit. You can wear it on your belt openly back in the 70s.
So it's
when
just
he was doing
a
this.
quirk of his is to bring his weapon with him, I guess.
Yeah, and he he was a 6-foot guy, but he probably was a hard drinker and went into bar. Out in the West, a lot of people carry guns. That doesn't impress me so much. But he went down in this gondola. He claimed he had a breathing apparatus on because it's real dusty and dark. He had a couple of spot headlights on, and they lower him down, and he had a radio with him, a walkie-talkie. And he said, then all of a sudden he came to a clearing because he wanted to find out what the heck is breaking all these expensive drill bits, right? Because this is the start of the base, to be clear. He said they drilled 4 6-foot holes down to the level they wanted to be at, excavated that, and then they would drop these, train car size boring machines into there to start the actual boring, right? The tunnels. And he said, so I go down, and I'm looking around in this dark cavern, and suddenly I open up. It's like a big cavern. And all of a sudden, I'm going, what the heck's breaking? And he said, all of a sudden, he saw these not cute little gray guys, but like 6-foot tall gray guys. He said they look like aliens. They had the triangle-shaped head and all, but they look kind of lizard-like. And he said they had fangs. He goes, these guys had teeth, not like you've been told the little grays just have a little mouth. And he said, and they were angry. And he goes, 3 of them started coming at me, and I'm standing there right off the gondola. And he said, immediately I pulled out my Walter PPK because I saw they were coming to get me. They weren't coming to greet me. And I shot one of them, and he constantly said in each of his lectures, these guys may be from another planet or wherever they're from, but they're not supermen or gods because I killed 2 of them with my Walter PPK.
Right.
And then he said at that point, one of them, now this is where it gets like Disneyland. I mean, it makes it hard. He said one of them tapped a kind of a thing on his chest, like a button that he might have been wearing, I don't know, a harness or something, and he tapped it, and he said a blue type of ray came out, and he said, I put my hand up, and it burned my 3 fingers, and it cut me open, and he said I would have been dead, except we had these guys that are called brown berets.
Right.
And he said they're like green berets, and they were set up just, he says, I think, for these secret bases.
Yeah, I mentioned
So
that
I radioed
briefly,
around.
just like you said, but because that story is kind of all out there, I kind of skipped over it, so...
But that part of Phil Schneider, and we see it very many times through his talks that he's given, and a lot of these are on YouTube that you can find. And I guess you can agree with this, Dino, is that in each story that he tells, each different video that you come across, the story is consistent. It's always the same, pattern, and If there was some deviation from topic to topic, then I would really say like, okay, I'm not really buying this guy. I think this guy is full of, manure. But his stories are consistent, so it leaves me to believe that there must be something true into what he's saying.
Well, I mean, what you say is true, Space. It's even. Travis Walton, who I've been lucky enough to talk with on 2 occasions over 10 years alone, he never changes his story either, but that's another topic. But the thing, if you can imagine going down and seeing hideous creatures, I mean, he apparently never knew about this, even though he had a top secret clearance. It was because he worked on military bases, and he was building these things secretly. But he just assumed, these are just bases for national security. And he said, I love America. I was born here, even after I found out that my father had been a Nazi. He said, but he said, the reason I broke my oath and went out and talked about these things is because I learned what they were really being used for. And he said, that day when I called, he said, I was half unconscious, and the other gondola came down, and it had this one guy who lost his life pretending to be a brown beret who threw me onto the gondola, told him to take me up, and then he said about 15 of these guys, he claimed, came down, and they had a shootout with these tall, gray aliens. And he said, we killed a few of them, but he said, we lost some of our guys, too. And he said that's what made him realize, that what he was doing, the public needed to know. He said it's not to help America. He said this is some evil, clandestine intent. That's not what I signed up for. Oh.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's everything exactly what I read and what he mentioned in his videos. And like I said, I get the impression that he's, like you said, he's more like a whistleblower that needed to get the word out. He wanted us to be aware of what's going on so we could take a video I saw. He had like a Q&A where people coming up to ask at a mic. They said, well, what can we do to, start to begin to put a stop to this? He's like, attend these lectures, get all the information you can. Don't believe, what everything you're told as far as what the government says. So, all good stuff. And then I guess he paid the ultimate price for it, as most of them seem like they do. If that actually happened, or,
Well, I mean that is interesting. That and I wonder on another topic whether we were lucky. You were lucky enough, and that was quite an event when Stan Romanek called in, and I think that's how they do it now. They don't seem to be killing as many people. They being those who want to keep these secrets from the.
He's way too high profile now. I think that's what.
Exactly,
keep him safe.
and so they try to get you other ways. They don't seem. I don't know if they're murdering. Maybe they took out. Who's the doctor that took the implants out? I don't know, but he was getting old. But now they try to discredit you. I mean, to accuse you of doing something that would make people disgusted of you and therefore not believe what you're saying. It's a very scary thing. But that don't get me involved with how we're being lied to. That's what bothers me the most. But the horror of going down into that base, and then of course. You taught me a few things, but I guess other people have found evidence that there are multi-levels, and supposedly the lower you go in the Dulce base, that's where humans are not allowed, as you mentioned.
And it gets more horrific and more like a nightmare, the stuff that supposedly goes on down there. And
oh, yeah, they say supposedly they have humans in cages, and they're
all stuff I mentioned, if you could tear yourself away from your potato, you might want to heard that.
But I agree with you. I agree with you, Dino. The story, especially with Phil Schneider, is one that it's really it puts you on the edge of your seat. It's kind of like you don't expect a guy to go down in the gondola and find what he finds and then it puts the hair on back of my neck, makes it stand up. So I find it a great.
Can
story.
you imagine?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Can you imagine? I could. That's exactly. It's just the horror of seeing that. Thank you, Tina. Roger Lear is the doctor that used to take the implants out. But that's the whole thing. Is that Dulce base? If it really, it reminds one a little bit, not as probably more horror than Montauk. When we were lucky enough to view that movie, I mean that still seems very strange. Here,
you had humans messing with humans, but here you've got humans and non-humans, and the non-humans think they're better and they're in control, and they don't care about anything but themselves.
Yeah, that's the thing, and so for Phil or anybody else who comes out, I mean, I have to tell you, especially the last year, I've been really questioning what I hear on some shows. There are people that come on and they talk as easily as I talk, and I don't know if they're making up stories. They don't have documentation. But in Phil Schneider's case, again, we don't know what's under Dulce, but when he was coming out speaking about it before this whole secret exopolitical agenda was really a big deal. I mean, in the 90s, there was a core dedicated group, but I think it's expanded now. So back then, there wasn't any profit in telling these types of things. And so that's why he and Travis Walton and some of the, well, to us, old school, there were people before we were born talking about this. But now the word is getting out, and I tend to believe someone like a Phil Schneider, and even if someone else took him out. He had a bad gambling debt or something, but I heard he wasn't like that. Even if someone else took him out, the fact that he had so much information, and how did he lose those fingers and have half his body? There's no record of him going in for open heart surgery or anything. So I tend to believe his story about.
Believable and definitely very interesting. And it seems like both of us agree that it's a fantastic story. Just like the Dulce War itself, with I don't know why I keep butchering his name. Costello. It just seems like a movie type thing, and that's why I find it fascinating.
Somebody should do a movie. There's plenty there.
Yeah, there's plenty enough content to do something, based on the book called the Dulce Wars, but it's all good stuff.
Well, I have to say, I'm watching all my screeners for the SAG Awards that they send me. I wish I could share them with you, but I have to destroy them after I watch them. And last night I finally got to watch Arrival, and guess what? The linguist nicknamed the two aliens, Abbott and Costello.
Right. Yeah, we saw the movie.
We're hoping that Amy and I can't remember
Adams.
Amy Adams wins Best Actress in that one.
I think I'm going to vote for her for sure.
We're not trying to persuade, just that
No, I thought she did an excellent job. She was a believable redhead. Some redheads like Lucy were over the top, but she was very believable in that role.
She was good in the Superman.
And very well acted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's we're a fan of hers. So.
Yeah, well, it's great. Well, again, I could keep on someone else maybe wanting to call, but when you do another underground base, you say it's coming up.
Yes.
I would like to come back on and speculate more about things and
on the 28th.
The 28th of this month.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'd like to compare notes because this is how I learned. People think I know a lot. I really don't. When I started off looking into all this stuff, I thought, well, I'll read a couple of books and, the Internet's helpful. But it has become, it's such a large area. You could get a master's degree in this stuff. I mean, there is so much information out there, and that's why I do respect Richard Dolan. I'd like to talk to him again alone, because when he started writing, that's what he was doing, trying to get a master's in history of the Cold War, just write a thesis. But he saw how much information was out there that he changed his focus, and he did it from a literary standpoint. So there's a lot out there that we need to compare notes because I miss details, you might miss a detail, or you might hear something, a fact that was left out, and that's how we get to the truth.
Indeed. Well, Dino, you're always welcome to call in, and like I said, the 28th we'll have that show, and just tune in. You know where to find us.
All right. Good night.
Good night, Dino. All right. Anybody else out there?
No, not right at this moment.
What? Tina Carpenter can't call in? No? No K28? No Dan Lopez? Yeah, I'm putting all of y'all. James Cruz, is he still out there?
I don't know. I haven't heard him say anything in a while.
Yeah. But anyway, the phone lines are always open for you guys. You just have to call 1-800, let me do this again. 844-734-SBUN. That's 844-734-SBUN 7286. So, Surlana, our last person on that list is Anthony Sanchez.
Yeah, not a lot to say. I listened to a lecture he gave, and this is on YouTube. So he's a researcher, and he wrote a book called UFO Highway, which I hope to read soon. Now, he went to Dulce, and he went to the Mesa and all these places that get talked about. Now, he went there, and he did find steel military-grade boxes laying around the top of this area, this Mesa. He and Hayakawa, I can't remember the guy's first name, they tried to move these boxes, but they were so freaking heavy. The best they could do is kind of nudge them a bit, and when they did, Oh, here comes a call. Steam rose out from under the box.
Really?
Let's see. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I am.
Hey, it's
Ty.
Ty. See, I didn't say you on that list because usually $10 to a donut. You know, you're going to call in one way or another, and we appreciate you.
Are you staying warm?
Thank you very much.
Are you staying warm, Ty?
Yeah, we have to. We have to. Yeah, we have to. It's like -7 Fahrenheit. It was lower than that.
And here we're shaking.
And this is the point I want to drive home to you,
35
Surlana,
degrees.
is that it's always colder somewhere else.
And it's always 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah.
I was wondering, maybe they don't have any bases in Canada like the Dulce base because it's too cold for those aliens.
Probably,
Yeah.
because, you know, when you hear a lot of the stories about the Greys, they're usually in warmer climates.
Well, you know, the reptilians, if they're like reptiles we know, they have to be regulated by their environment. They can't really do it like we do it. So they have to, if they want to be warm, they have to be somewhere warm.
Sounds very primitive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If they're so superior, why can't they go into any kind of weather they want to?
Well, speaking of which, you know, it's primitive. I was also reading Costello was asked about the Dracos making decisions, and they're very slow at it. In fact, that you would usually, you know, unlike us, where we can make a decision, bam, like that. They would be asked, you know, a question about making a decision, and you would talk about, 13 to 15 hours later before they could make an answer. So maybe another benefit on our side to combat the Dracos is that, being able to make quick decisions, which they, I guess, cannot. They can't grasp.
Yeah, that's another downfall of these reptilians is that it can take them hours to come to a decision, like they have to do it collectively or something, and that is we can take advantage of them. I don't know if they're procrastinating or what it is they're doing, so they do have some weaknesses we could exploit, assuming they do exist.
Well, I think they exist, but you're right. I think the cold would be one thing. If they can't regulate their temperature, just like reptilians, like we know on Earth, then the cold might slow them down.
Indeed.
And that overwhelming politeness, I don't know if they could handle it.
Just like Canadians.
That's what I'm saying. That's why they're not in Canada. It's all that just, would you like some poutine, eh? I don't think they could take it.
Well, I just wanted to phone in and say hi and let you know that I phone in on times when you don't have space swag,
Yeah, I was going to say, did you happen to get a box recently of any things in it, or?
Last time I called, I talked with
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Everything blends into one another.
I notice that with myself these days too.
I don't notice
age for me, I think.
Yeah, I don't notice any difference between this month, last year, this year. It's just kind of the same stuff.
Well, I kind of take it one day at a time, or when Spaceboy Universe is on, 1 week at a time, I guess.
That's how I like to take it.
And then whatever comes my way, and I deal with it.
Oh, well, they're also saying that these, like you said, the cold keeps them away, and they don't wear clothes, so that might, they might be another reason they don't go up there.
Is that why what circus pants came up?
Yeah, they won't put on a hockey jersey or anything, and try to stay warm.
All right. Well, Ty, we appreciate you calling the universe, and we love Canadians, as you know, and so try to stay warm.
Well, of course, yeah. It's a job these days.
Indeed. At least with us, next week we'll be returning to
Tuesday. We'll be 85 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes,
that's just nutty.
Tonight we're at freezing 0 degrees Celsius, and but yeah, so just keep warm thoughts.
That's pretty cold for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it's unusual.
Freezing.
Yeah, but see, it won't last long. It'll be gone by tomorrow.
Well, you're going to have to chalk it up to climate change, I think, because this Arctic vortex for us is going to have us in the minus 30s, pretty close to minus 40 in Fahrenheit as well.
Man,
because minus 40 in Celsius and minus 40 in Fahrenheit are the same.
I can't get my head around that.
If you plot Celsius on a graph and you plot Fahrenheit on a graph, the intersecting point will be minus 40.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow. All right, Ty. Well, I guess we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, yeah, I'll be listening for next week.
All right.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys take care, eh?
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was Ty. Who do we have next here?
Are you still there? Caller?
I am.
Yep.
JC.
Who is this again?
James Cruz.
Hey!
Oh, you are still there.
See, I knew that putting him on the spot in some way, he'd get him to call in. So, how are you, Mr. Cruz?
Yeah, what's going on?
I'm
doing good. How are you guys tonight?
We're doing fabulous. Getting close to the end of the show, but it's been a pretty interesting night. What are some of your thoughts about tonight and Dulce and bases and aliens and all that good stuff?
The Dulce story is amazing. I like Dino's story too.
Mm-hmm.
Dino's always fascinating for a story.
Dino could have his own show
No
if
doubt,
he
no
wanted
doubt. Yeah. He's always a blast. Yeah, the underground base stuff's pretty cool. I've seen, I guess the same videos as most people have seen online about whatever the main guy got all busted up.
Mm-hmm. But Phil Schneider.
Yeah, Schneider. Yeah. But if it's a story, it's a crazy story. I don't know why he would have mutilated himself like that. But
well, the thought could be, I was thinking about it. He's working on heavy machinery. Could it possibly be that maybe work-related injuries or something to that effect, or
right?
But then again, you get the story that he tells, and I know I've said this again. I sound like a parrot repeating this, but his story is consistent. When you listen, that's one thing. It's when you're listening to all these stories. And
you don't think there's such a thing as a consistent prevaricator?
I know where you're coming from on that, Surlana, but in this situation,
liars can't keep up with their own lies.
I don't. I think that liars. They're
sorry to get philosophical on you.
I'm sure there's some people out there that they're good liars. But I'm
a horrible liar.
I think with Phil Schneider, we see a guy that. I've seen some very genuine people like him, that I've worked with in the oil patch business here down in the South. And, you can tell something about certain people that, they feel genuine. And then there's people that I've heard lie right to my face and know that they're lying, and yet they come across as genuine. So I don't know. I have that personal sense of looking at somebody and telling them or telling of them that they're BS, What say you, James?
Yeah, same thing. I'm a horrible liar. Deal with people all the time, though, that lie right to your face. Like, I deal in real estate and, with property ownership and stuff. So, I'm in charge of, 2 buildings with, about 60 units. And you won't believe half the crap that people spill out, I get it for sure all day long, every day. But
right.
Personally, I'm a horrible liar, so I don't lie. I try not to. I don't think I do. With this stuff, I've never seen a UFO. I would love to, but I have never seen one.
Well, the thing is that with lying,
like today, man. Like today, I'm like, "What's in the sky?" And I it had to be a drone. I think that's 99% 9% of the crap that's out there right now.
That's what
Whether it's
she
a
said.
military drone or something. But
That's what Schreiner said. She said the UFOs you see, they're real. It's not that is that a UFO? She says yes, but it's who's driving it. It's an alien craft based on alien technology, but it's CIA driving it, you know.
I can see something like that, yeah. I mean, but just tonight, yeah, just something hovering around, a constant red light. But then they had two like alternating green lights. You know, it could have been one of those bigger drones. You know, like it wasn't like an airplane. You know, you would see it zipping across with you know how they almost have like headlights on them. They actually have running like brighter white lights on an airplane. This was like kind of chilling over the neighborhood. So. And,
yeah, see, it's hard these days to identify something anomalous because we do have those drones.
Yeah. Proof would be like, something landing in your yard and something walking out of it. I mean, like that. I mean, I don't know how the hell you would tell otherwise. It's just like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you see stuff on video. That Chile video was kind of cool. But
yeah.
That they just released. But yeah, I mean, interesting though.
It is what it is, and I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, and you know, it's like I said, it's interesting. It's in the look at to read.
I do believe that they have bases underground. I don't know exactly what they're doing there, but I don't put it past them to be doing something illegal, immoral, underhanded. Aliens, I'm not sure if that's true, but I have no problem believing our government's capable of anything.
Yeah.
Well, James, we appreciate you calling. I'm just sorry it took me to call you out and actually call in.
He wasn't trying to call you out, you know what I mean? He was just trying to encourage participation.
No, I was listening. I was actually just kind of chilling out. I was listening to the show, and I was playing Uncharted 4. My son got PS4 for Christmas. So.
Nice. I think that they're
killing time on a Saturday night.
They're in the process of making a movie out of that.
Uncharted 4?
I want to see that Assassin's Creed movie.
I heard it's okay.
I don't know how you make a movie out of that game. I've seen people play Assassin's Creed. It seems kind of boring.
Well, the game is...
it's repetitive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's repetitive, but it's fun. I don't know. I like the storyline. It's kind of jumps back and forth, future to.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't play anything really in the future, but it's kind of cool. Those are the kind of games I like. I don't play like. I like more adventure, like this Uncharted one. It's really cool, but yeah, like Call of Duty and all that stuff. I don't play anything.
Right.
We play PC games from Steam. We don't really do the consoles anymore.
Yeah, next winter I'm gonna get my son. He's 10 now, but I want to build a PC from scratch, like, you know, get all the parts and stuff, and then we can work on it together and build it and stuff. So, and I want it to be like a really good gaming machine, maybe
good
VR capable type thing.
I've built mine for years, and then after doing that for years, I'm like, now I'm just getting them store bought and ready because I'm too old for this crap anymore. So.
Oh yeah,
it's good skills
I know you're
to pass on.
All that. I did that same stuff. I did graphic design for 13 years, and like I said, I do something totally different now. I can't stand computers anymore. It was ridiculous.
Well,
I was all Mac stuff.
Well, that's what I bought. I bought a laptop that was it's a PC gaming laptop that has all the screaming specs for gaming, but I got it for that because all those specs work good for all my graphic design Adobe products. So
no, nothing was as good as a Mac for design aspects and editing and all that stuff.
I just can't. I can't do it. I can't. It's like trying to... It's like I'm right-handed. That's like trying to be left-handed. I can't handle that mouse. I can't handle that stripped down. That's probably why it's so good. It has a lot of fussy bits taken out of it that that's not going on in the background. It's not cluttering up the memory. But I can't do that. It's like trying to work with an alien, maybe. I don't know.
It was really hard to go back and forth between the two. I mean, we have a laptop now. I mean, I have two like I have the Power Max, like an older one, and I have the newer one where it's all built into the screen. And I had a laptop. The laptop's broke, but I haven't touched that stuff in about 3 years.
But I can deal with PCs. I don't mind a challenge. I don't mind being frustrated by it and troubleshooting my own problems. I just not intimidated, not bothered by it at all. Plus, I'm living with the IT guru, so.
True.
Well, James, we appreciate you calling.
Take it over here. Oh yeah, for sure. I'll let you guys go. It was fun.
Yeah, and just tune in with us, and just keep listening.
Always. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Have a good evening.
Bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Space Cadets.
Spaceboy Universe is hosted by Spaceboy and Surlana. Executive producer is Surlana. Associate producer is Lee Ann Cordes. Music production is Spaceboy of SpaceboyMusic.com. Special thanks goes out to Lee Ann K, K28, Dino, Solars Blue Raven, Patrick Sporer, Bob and Beverly N. This has been a Spaceboy Universe production. Support the universe by exploring Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. Sweet dreams, Space Cadets.
Hi, I'm Spaceboy.
And I'm Surlana.
And you're listening to Spaceboy Universe
on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.